Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission for Thursday, September 28th. If you have a cell phone with you, you might shut it off now. That's what I'm doing to mine. For those of you who are with us possibly for the first time, the way this generally works, we have a little bit of housekeeping here at the beginning, some things to run through. When the matter that you are here to speak about is called, we will ask the applicant to come forward, give us a brief presentation of what it is they're here asking for. Commissioners may or may not have questions that they want to pursue with the applicant. And then we'll ask anyone who's here to speak either on behalf of or in opposition to that item to come forward and speak. If you have an item here that you're wanting to speak on, there's a gentleman sitting at a table outside. He has little slips of paper. If you fill them out and bring them forward to the staff, they'll make sure we have them when that time comes. I'm guessing most of you are here to speak either about item 20 or item 21, but they're all open for discussion. So, first item on the agenda is the receipt of the minutes of the September 14th meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the September 14th meeting. Would you cast your votes, please? And they are received. Yeah, we need to switch Form 5 there. No, shut off 4.
You don't need to turn on.
4 and 7. There you go. Nope, that's 5.
Okay, well then they're messed up.
There you go. We have received the minutes. Next, we'll do continuance requests, and first among those is our uncontested requests.
We have 3 uncontested requests today. First is item 23, SPUD 1002, defer to October 12th. Item 24, PUD 1655, defer to October 26th. And item 25, CE 956, defer to October 26th.
Do I have a motion?
Move the continuances.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move items 23, 24, and 25. So cast your votes, please. Those items are continued all until October the 12th. No, first 2 till October 12th, the 3rd to the 26th. And then new requests.
2 new requests on the agenda. Item 7, CE 959, defer to October 12th. And item 15, SPUD 967, to December 14th. We have 1 additional item that's not on your agenda. Item 12, PUD 1653, defer to October 12th.
Is there anybody here today that was wanting to be heard on one of those items, 7, 12, 15? Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue items 7, 12, and 15. If you'll cast your votes, please. Those items are continued.
Next will be the consent docket. Consists of item 1, C6880, final plat of Chisholm Village 4. Item 2, ABC 904 and ABC 2 overlay at 16325 North May. Item 3, ABC 905 for an ABC 2 overlay at 2800 Northwest 140th Street. Item 4, CE 958, application to close an alley at 3rd and Broadway. Item 5, CE 960, application to close several streets in the vicinity of the new MAPS Convention Center. Item 6, CE 961, an application to close a utility easement at 2701 Northwest Expressway.
Is there anybody in the audience who is here to be heard on one of those items, items 1 through 6? Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Would you cast your votes, please? Before we move on, I want to just say that I want to thank staff for the effort that they made. With respect to item number 6, its appearance on the consent agenda is a real triumph of effort over inertia. It took quite a bit of doing to get that matter in the posture that it's in, and the fact that we're voting on it on the consent agenda is a wonderful thing. So my thanks to staff for the effort there.
Okay, the first item for public hearing is item number 8, SPUD 1005, application to rezone 2411 Northwest First Terrace.
The applicant present? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Say so, yeah, if you want to.
I will be recusing myself on this item, as this is an item being presented by my own firm. So,
Could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Klaus Ryman Phillip, 301 North Harvey Avenue, Oklahoma City. And I'm representing Downtown Oklahoma City Kiwanis organization in their efforts to replace an existing early Head Start school, which is shown on the site plan there. And really the SPUD is 3 different items that we're seeking to change. One is it's zoned R1, so we're getting a special use exemption for the use of the Head Start school. The second is for the on-street parking, which we have already received approval through Traffic Commission for the shown parking arrangement. And the third is for the use of metal panel siding, cladding for the building.
I was having a hard time remembering why I've already seen this case, but it was the metal paneling on BOA, right?
Correct,
yeah. Okay. I guess for the benefit of the record and the people present, I'll say that Commissioner Highsmith's involvement in the project predates his position as a commissioner, and so is there any discussion on this matter? Is there anything that we want to talk about here? Or do I have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 8. Would you cast your votes, please? And it is approved.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Item
It's a
9.
wonderful project, by the way. I hope it all turns out as great as it looks like it will.
Item 9, SPUD 1008, application by Knockouts Haircuts for Men to rezone 3330 West Memorial Road.
The applicant present? Come forward, please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Khosrow Iqbal, and my address is 801 Northwest 188, Edmond, Oklahoma.
And what is it that you're asking us for?
We would like to be able to serve a complimentary low-point beverage for our clients who wait for a haircut.
This is yet another one of these odd things that we're going to be seeing more and more of, I have no doubt. There are some distinctions, I guess, with respect to this one. It's not a situation in which we're really in a position to limit the sale or the use or the service. We're not sure which it is. Is it sale of beer or is it?
It's complimentary,
Are you serving
but
beer?
it's a complimentary item.
Complimentary item.
And the city has required us to get permission and a license and everything, regardless if we sell it or not. There's only 5 items we keep in a 2-foot by 3-foot fridge. It's a small fridge in our waiting area.
So this is not a situation where we're able to limit that, where children are not present like we do in some others. It is, however, in this case, a limited area, 13 by 21. I think just as a policy matter, we may want to think about whether we need to develop some guidelines on these before we get inundated by them. But with respect to this particular item, do I have any questions or comments from commissioners? And is there anybody present who wants to speak to the item first, I guess? We'll do that. No?
You're not changing any of the uses, right, from the existing PUD? All you're adding is the overlay to give you the ability to...
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the defined area square footage-wise is your waiting area, that's right?
It's just waiting area. We have 5 chairs. This is a corporate from Texas.
Yep.
So we just want to be in line with our corporate business model and Tulsa business model, Lawton business model.
I'll note that it's tied to the use as well as a barber shop, so if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application.
Is this the one that makes specific reference to the Low Point beer or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it, because we want to remove that reference.
Yes, that's okay. However
Low
you...
Point beer is something that's going to go away in Oklahoma if it hasn't already. So rather than have that specific designation, we're just going to talk about beer and not Low Point beer.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 9. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Item number 10 is SPUD 1009, application by Knockouts Haircuts for Men to rezone 6401 Northwest Expressway.
That's our second location. Same.
Same.
This is one question I had for staff here. My staff report says that the following uses will be the only uses permitted, and it goes on to say, drinking establishments, sit-down, alcohol permitted, limited to hair salon, barbershop. I want to make sure that what we're talking about here is beer only, not other kinds of alcohol.
We can make that happen.
Okay. And my comments from the previous thing apply here. This is a 15 by 15 is what I show as the service area. It's a limited space, one suite, so.
And it's free.
Second.
You're
Yes, sir.
giving
It is
away.
complimentary, but we got to get our permission.
For our purposes, it really doesn't matter whether it is or is not, so.
I'll move approve.
Second.
If there's not any other comments.
I have a motion and a second to approve item, is there anybody here who wants to be heard on this matter? No? A motion and a second to approve item number 10. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you, guys.
Item 11, SPUD 1012, application to rezone 9417 North Council Road.
The applicant present? Give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Aaron Brewster. I'm at 1621 18th Street, Denver, Colorado, 80202.
And tell us what it is that you're seeking here.
We are seeking a rezone to allow a development of an Integris microhospital.
Commissioners, this is I have met with these applicants. I have no problem whatsoever with the idea of a micro-hospital here. I have some difficulty with the idea that what we're going to do is keep all of the C3 uses in the world and add a high-intensity institutional use to it. It's my view that that is not how PUDs and SPUDs work. They're going to tear down the building. They're going to reconfigure the site. I think they can limit the zoning. I see that the TEs, which I assume you're in agree with,
Yes.
take care of my issues with respect to signage. But I believe that this application and the one that follows need to be tailored for the use that they're requesting. So, just throw that out there for discussion.
Would it be favorable if the rezone of the high-impact institutional be restricted to only hospital construction? Some of the challenge we have with restricting the C3 use is this land isn't currently owned by us, and the current landowner is uncomfortable with restricting uses until we know we're moving forward with a hospital. So there's a little bit of a catch-22 with that challenge.
Well, that's kind of a chicken and the egg question that I'm not willing to be on the downside of. I just, if you're making the commitment to the site, you're going to build a new building, you're going to do all that, then I think we need to go all in here and limit it to the use that it's being used for. For what it's worth.
My only comment on that would be that, I mean, at the end of the day, this is at the hard corner of Council and Northwest Expressway. It's an appropriate area for that use and density. And I understand what you're saying. It's highly unlikely they're going to build a multi-million-dollar facility and come and tear it down like Beauty Brands and build something else in a couple years. But I think it's unfair to the owner of that property to say, well, you're going to have to rezone it in order for you to move your thing, to move this forward. It is a chicken or an egg, but the zoning is proper for the place it's in today, and he's adding a use that would allow this. So the question is really, do we think this use is proper in addition to those, in my view?
We are making a significant capital investment into the community and into this property. So if it's favorable to limit the high-impact institutional zone to nothing but hospitals, I'm hoping that may help.
I don't know that I understand. You're saying you don't want to see 3 uses? Or you want to see 3 uses,
And we want to add...
but you want to add the high-intensity hospital.
Which also includes quasi-government facilities, education facilities, and
Okay, so-
hospital facilities.
So you want to limit your high-impact institutional to only a micro-hospital?
Correct.
Okay.
He's indifferent about the C3 because his use unit is provided for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I'm with you on that. Were I the owner of this property, I don't know that I would give up what I consider a reversionary use, that if sometime in the future the property is not used as a micro-hospital, that I would give it up. I mean, I think that's kind of I think we split, we diverge on this one, Commissioner Powers, because, it'd be a tough ask for me to have to come back 10 years down the road to get back what I already had. I mean, we're just giving them a micro-hospital, which frankly I think is a significant good add, for lack of a better way to put it, for that particular corner. I mean, I think it benefits where we are. So I don't have any, I'm with the caveat that it's industrial use unit is limited to that, to the hospital use. I think I'm fine with it, but I'll defer if there's any other comments before I make a motion.
I've got one comment. Did we manage to do anything about that one curb cut?
So we took the opportunity to meet with some of the commissioners. Mr. Highsmith had some concerns with the curb cut on Britton. We were trying to utilize existing cuts as best of our ability and not add any additional cuts, which we've done. If we need to eliminate the far west curb cut on Britton, we will find a way to make that work if we can.
My feeling in reviewing it was just that it seemed unnecessary, and where possible to really be consistent with the comp plan. I try to make sure that we're limiting curb cuts. So with a single curb cut on each major entry point, I felt like that last one might be unnecessary, and where possible, like to try to reduce those. So that was my consideration.
The only thing I'd say about that is that, and I understand the goal there. In this particular case, I'm concerned, I think that my preference for this corner is to move the traffic onto Britton because of the other traffic that's on this corner. That's like a Burger King, and they're going to, as far as I understand,
That's correct.
You're taking access out through the next door to the Burger King. You'll have a point out there.
That's correct.
And then Britton is a signalized intersection, right?
Down below Burger King, I believe it is.
Yeah, to the
Yes,
right. So
correct.
the more traffic we get there, in this particular case, and I think some of the employee parking is planned back out to this back the north section of that, and so that might eliminate some of that traffic coming up the other way. I don't know, Asa, it may not make any difference, but that was my thought. Just because that intersection is kind of kludged up, for lack of a better way to put it.
Well, for me, I guess I was less concerned with automobile traffic and more concerned with pedestrian traffic. If, we're asking a lot of these developers to come in and spend the capital improvements on sidewalks,
Right.
then we should at least make them a place where people want to walk. And so I always feel like the less curb cuts, the more inviting as a potential.
In a lot of situations, I might agree with you, but I think this one, I wonder, like I said, because of that, we would prefer to get the traffic onto Britain, I think, but that's just my view.
One additional item that we've created that I'd like to point out is the enhanced landscaping between our zone and the residential zone to our south. We were going to increase the density of trees by 2 to 3 times along that road to try to help some of that condition with the residential unit next to us. So we offered to do that as well.
Does traffic have a view? I mean, did they?
We've met with the traffic engineers, and they were comfortable with this layout.
All right.
Are you aware of the other technical evaluations that were provided by staff?
I am. Technical 1 and 3 are certainly manageable. Item 2 does pose some challenge for us. This is a heavy commercialized zone. It's an intense commercial zone, and most folks along that line have the ability to conform to the current Oklahoma City signage guidelines. We are providing emergency services to the community, and restricting our signage would create some challenge for folks to find us in an emergency situation. So we would request that we continue to conform to the Oklahoma City signage guidelines and not be restricted to the 8 feet.
This is
Yeah,
an
that's a
awfully
hard
huge,
no for me.
an awfully huge site to have an 8-foot-tall, 100-square-foot monument sign.
We've
It's an
got
awfully
some
large
pictures
site.
to share if we'd like to see some of the photos along there. I'm sure folks have...
I'm familiar with the signs, with the signage out there, obviously, but I think we could do better than a C3 pole sign.
Yeah.
Because I don't see that being a model that Integris has either endorsed or used at any of their other properties.
I totally agree. I just want to make sure he was aware of the size limitation more than anything
I
else.
was
Yeah, yeah.
waiting for him to bring it
I
up.
think we could talk different. I'm not arguing about 8 feet necessarily. I think that may be a little deficient, but I do think, I don't want a 35-foot pole sign up there with Integris on it.
I think we could restrict ourselves to no pole signs and create nicer masonry or cementitious materials and more attractive materials to be put up. I think we could offer that.
That would be how tall?
Well,
Not
again,
35 feet.
I'd like to
That's the
conform to the
wrong
current
answer.
sign guidelines, but I think we could probably restrict ourselves to 25 feet.
Oh, what? I just think that's too, still, I think 20 is probably, for what you're building, I don't think you're going to be mistaken for Burger King or Best Buy at that location.
This is something that you really need to think about. I mean, because once it's done, it's a whole other process to change that again. And we see a lot of this stuff on the Board of Adjustment, especially from your type of user, where people come in and they're in an institutional setting and they want wayfindings and that stuff is not. So you just need to.
The concern, again, is just in an emergency situation, if a community member is trying to find this in the sea of all those other signs, the challenge we have is to have that restriction.
I totally understand. And at this point, you are restricted to an accessory sign that is 8 feet in height and 100 square feet. So.
That's what we're suggesting with the TE.
Right. We would,
So if you got a picture of your sign, you need to bring it up.
we don't have a picture of our current sign. It's still being developed, but I can tell you that we've got, the development is nicer masonry signs, backlit signs, not a bunch of front signs, and they are about, we don't have the height figured out yet. We're trying to get as best we can, but again, in competition with our neighbors, we are hoping to conform to the Oklahoma City signage standards that are already written and out there.
The standards that are written would allow you a 40-foot sign with 200 square feet. That's, way out of scale, so.
I know, I can't approve.
And maybe we misinterpreted it,
I can't buy
but
that.
based on the frontage, the additional linear footage of frontage we have, we can grow that sign. The first one being 200 feet, we would be limited to a 20-foot sign. I think we could limit ourselves to that 20-foot sign if that's in favor of the commission.
I will tell you, the reason I brought this up is just because, and this is probably the most common sign variance, I would say, anymore, that comes before the Board of Adjustment, is these things aren't thought through by these types of users, and then they open these big facilities, and then they come back in and they say, well, we want people to be able to find our emergency room, and we want people to, and what I don't want you to do is get approved and then have to spend $1,200 to try to get a variance or have to go through this process again to change your signage. So it's a big deal. It's important to your site. You're hearing the pushback. I don't know what you want to do there, but I don't think 8 feet and 100 or 8 feet tall and 100 square feet is going to get you there.
Correct. That's it.
I agree, eight, I'm not asking for 8. I personally am, I don't know what I'm only one vote. So I think 8 for that corner is probably a little large, but I also think I don't want a 40-foot pole sign. So I don't want a 40-foot monument sign there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hammond, you said that 8 feet might be a little large or a little small? Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. It's paramount for us to get approval, so I'd like to, I mean, that's certainly the most important. But if we could restrict ourselves to that first sign size of 20 feet as shown in the guidelines.
That's a height, so what square footage are you going to ask for?
Whatever is shown there. Let me look here. It just says the freestanding sign is a minimum clearance of 14 feet, linear footage from 0 to 100 feet, maximum height of 20 feet. It does not mention a square footage. I would propose that we submit a sign application as we would have to anyway and get it approved through the sign permit.
I don't think you have to do that.
Well,
After we do it, that's...
We're here to decide that today.
Yeah.
So,
that's what I'm trying to...
you know, when you're talking about the sign and a monument sign, the part of it that is not
The market
conveying
piece.
information
Yeah.
is not part of the square footage, is it? It is? So no, so it's, you know, what you're really wanting to know is, you know, what square footage do you need for the Integris and Medical Center and, you know.
Unfortunately, we don't have all that figured out yet, so I'm not sure what Integris would like to do, so I'm hesitant to restrict ourselves further simply because I don't know what their desires are.
Well, again, I think that
Michael, help him out. Tell him what you want.
I want a 20, I'll give you a 20-foot monument sign. You guys,
With what square footage on for
I'd
signage?
say 200. If I'm buying it small. So, you guys, I'm not, I mean,
I think
you had
we can
the
make-
staff,
I think
I
we can
have
make
to
a
say, you had the
20-foot sign.
staff report that said 8 by 100. You kind of should have pieced that part together to figure out this may have been an issue.
And I understand you're trying to move your application, but you're going to, I'm going to see you again. And I'm frankly trying to avoid that. So
I'm looking to get an approval as well here today, so I appreciate the considerations, and
if there's no other discussion, then I'll move approval subject to the technical evaluations. So,
can we adjust the technical evaluations on the sign?
okay.
20, what, you got any pictures of your signs?
Unfortunately, sir, I do not. They have not been developed.
Let's split the baby and call it 150 and move on.
I said 20 by 200. I'm fine with that.
I think we can make that work. 20 by 200 we can make work.
8 foot.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion.
Monument sign.
Monument sign.
Correct.
Yep.
What are we voting on?
So we have a motion to approve the application, subject to the technical evaluations, except the signage, which we will amend to be no more than a 20-foot monument sign with 200 square feet of signage.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve item number 11 as stated. Cast your votes, please. It is approved.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 12 was deferred to October 12th. Item 13 is PUD 1654, an application to rezone 6901 Northwest 150th Street.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. What we have before you is a PUD that would allow personal storage and, in addition, some office warehouse type of uses. I did hear the comment from Chairman Powers about tailoring this to the uses. So in that regard, there is a TE number 3 that asks us to take out 4 uses. We do agree to that. So we do agree to take out those uses. And in addition, We agreed to take out the congregate care, the multifamily residential, the senior independent living, and the two-family residential. So with that, it is our belief that it's more tailored to what it is we're doing. In addition, we did have conversations with the folks that own the property to the east, and they had some questions, and what we agreed to do that satisfied them is we're going to add some additional language that we can add as a TE here, that the PUD should prohibit freestanding light poles for all of our lighting. We will prohibit outdoor storage of RVs, boats, and cars. And then finally, in addition, we're agreeable to all of the TEs, except TE number 5, we would ask it to be modified to remove, to allow section 9.19 to remain. We did provide very detailed elevations of what we will build. So our hope is that we wouldn't need a specific plan because all we do is come back with what you see before you.
I don't have any specific elevations of what you're going to build. And
We submitted them. I'm not sure why they didn't get in your packet, but they were submitted.
So
the
these are
specific
them?
plan is kind of a big deal to me.
I hadn't seen them.
Yeah, we haven't seen those.
Wait, what are you looking for by way of, this right here, is this what you're referring to that was submitted?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why they weren't included in your packet. They were submitted.
Mr. Box, let me ask you while we're here, which uses did you say you were open to eliminating?
Sure. So at start, so the four that are identified in TE number 3. So that would be convenience sales and personal services, eating establishments, fast food, eating establishments, sit-down, alcohol not permitted, and food and beverage retail sales. And then additionally, the congregate care housing, multifamily residential, senior independent living, and two-family residential.
Okay, and you hit most of the ones I had flagged. The other ones were, what about custom manufacturing? I guess you got fast food was in the staff. What about manufacturing?
So because it's going to be office warehouse, and you might have a plumber, electrician, or somebody that might be doing some sort of light industrial type work, we wanted to keep that in.
Okay, because custom manufacturing is not full manufacturing, I guess.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And the other one I have is this participant recreation and entertainment. I don't know if you said that one, maybe that's necessary. There was just a lot in here, but you hit most all of what I had.
But we can take out the participant recreation.
Okay. Well, thanks for you had already addressed most of them. I did think there were way too many uses, but you had them.
I noticed that the all freestanding signs, and it doesn't say how many, will be maximum size of 12 feet high with 150 square feet.
Sure. So the TE number 6 limits it to 1, and we do agree to that. And we based our signage off of PUDs that were recently approved. We just matched that. And our problem is where you might not need some elevated signage if you were on the frontage. If you look at our site plan, Cindy, if you could go to that, we are set so far back behind another use that we would like to have some visibility. So I don't think that it's...
But where will it be placed?
On the frontage.
So the visibility is not really an issue with respect to the sign.
Well, sure. If you're competing with everyone else that's recently been approved by this body at 12 feet, I'm not sure why this at 12 feet would be inappropriate compared to why it was appropriate for our neighboring property owners.
And that is why we shouldn't be giving everybody bigger signs.
I don't think,
We're
to me, 12
creating
feet
sign competition.
But 12 feet isn't, along the stretch, I don't think 12 feet is an excessively tall sign, especially when it's a monument and done tastefully.
Does precedent of approvals matter to this body? Like if we get down to, is that necessary for consideration on an item?
I think that's a philosophical question.
I think you have to look at each case individually, but also you have to be consistent if the facts are consistent.
And the facts are quite often different. Way back when, this is not on Northwest Expressway, it's somewhere else. The facts they're always going to be different in some way, whether it's relevantly different. And so we can't, just because we've approved a 12-foot sign doesn't mean everybody does. It's, as she says, it's going to be facts are going to be different each time.
Well, I don't see 12 feet as being an unreasonable request. I think the challenge with sites like this, when they're shaped like a flag, is that they're occupying a very small amount of that frontage. So you end up with clutter when you have that type of restricted access to what is in this case Northwest 150th, and then as that further develops, you're going to wind up with more signs. And to Janice's point, everybody's going to want 12 feet. I don't think a 12-foot monument sign is unreasonable on Northwest 150th at 45 miles an hour, but that's just me.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about was metal structures.
So that was in there in error, and I've got an email drafted to send to staff. Paragraph 2 of section 9.1 can be deleted.
Say that one more time.
Paragraph 2 of section 9.1, which
Page
you'll find
3.
on page 3 of your staff report.
Make a note
Oh, I
of
see.
that.
We could just add that as a TE as well.
Oh, let's do.
Okay. We need more TEs.
Okay, where are we? Is there anyone who wants to be heard on this matter today? Sorry. Apparently not.
I will make a motion to approve the application subject to the technical evaluations as amended.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Did you cast your votes? I have a motion and a second to approve item number 13, subject to technical evaluations, as amended. Would you cast your votes, please?
Thank you.
It is approved.
Item 14, ABC 906, application for an ABC 3 overlay at 3304 Southwest 29th Street.
The applicant present?
Yes, we are. President Don Smitherman on behalf of Mr. Ed Cabral, El Patano Bar. My client, Mr. Cabral, is here as well. Address 211 North Robinson, Suite 1350, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Thank you for allowing us to be present today to present this request for an overlay.
Do I recall that this is a site that has been used previously as a bar for many years? And then the use of the site lapsed beyond the time that would permit it to continue as a non-conforming use, is that right?
That is correct, and the hotel owner has done significant remodeling, and this is the last piece to allow my client to reopen the bar to sell the Low Point beer and continue to use it adjacent to a gas station and then across the street hotel as well.
Is there anyone present who wants to be heard on this matter today? Commissioners, comments, questions, concerns? A motion?
Make a motion for approval?
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 14. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you very much.
Item 15 was deferred. Item 16 is Spud 1011, application to rezone 300 South Rockwell Avenue.
You got a picture of this sign?
Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. Would you like me to state my name again?
Yes, please.
Aaron Brewster, 1621 18th Street, Denver, Colorado, 80202. Again, here to request a rezone for an Integris Microhospital. Subject to the technical evaluations and with the signage discussion that we just previously had. Item number 1, on the technical evaluations, we can certainly conform to. There should have been an updated site plan that was sent to staff and to the commissioners. We have addressed item number 2, the technical evaluation. We have eliminated that access point on Reno and we'll be sharing it with the bank. We previously discussed item number 3. Item number 4 and 5 were also sent to staff late last week, which outlined the removal of references to PUD 726 and listed the permitted uses in the SPUD.
What were the permitted uses submitted?
The request was to just list them. I can all the permitted uses.
Or maybe we received those. Is that what, oh, I'm sorry, that's what was emailed out to us. We got
Yes.
that email, okay.
I think it's worth noting as well that under PUD 726, there are a list of restricted uses that will continue to live with this SPUD.
We don't have that information, and that's problematic for me. This application, in my view, is just not quite ready to be heard today. There's too much reference back to the existing PUD. I've already had my rant about layering I-2 and then C3 and now high-impact institutional use, so I won't repeat that in the effort to set a good example. But there's just too much that we can't tell from looking at what we have here in front of us today.
Let me ask you, when you said what we're looking at, we did receive, it wasn't last week's packet, but we did receive an email 2 days ago with information.
I saw that, yes, but if you read it, it doesn't tell you much other than that they're still referring back to PUD 726 with respect to any number of the development regulations and requirements for the site. And
This is one of the last remaining parcels of the Westgate Marketplace under PUD 726. And again, looking to just add high-impact institutional restricted to hospital use so we can develop the Integris Micro-Hospital on this property.
I understand what you're saying, and I can tell from our previous case that you guys are really trying to get this through. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Commissioner Powers on this. You've made reference to a PUD, and you want to connect your PUD to it. Well, what if 726 changes? This one doesn't change. We need those specifics to be able to review the application in fairness before we can say whether or not it's appropriate. And the short answer is I'm sure that it would be, given your other application. But there's a lot less here, and it just feels like you're trying to push it through, and that's going to make people uncomfortable.
I have met with these folks, and while as a whole we have no conflict in terms of the stated purpose for this use, I think this particular parcel is difficult to develop, and I think the intended purpose is well intended and welcomed for this area. But as these commissioners have stated, the language needs to be more clearly defined, and it would be my suggestion that you clean the language up and not reference this 726, and maybe get with the staff and clean up the language and maybe bring this back to us at the meeting on October the 12th. If that's satisfactory with you?
Yes.
Okay. So I would make that motion.
Before I take a second, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to be heard on this matter? No? So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue item number 16 until October the 12th. Would you cast your votes, please? And it's continued.
Thank you.
Item 17 is SPUD 1007, application to rezone 1140 Northwest 13th Street.
I'm Randy Hill with E.D. Hill, representing the applicant, and we have met with the staff, and we've met one of the commissioners, and we have agreed with we agree with all the summary of technical
evaluations. This case is a mess. I have somebody who signed up to speak, and there may be more than one person here who wants to be heard today, but do the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Hill before we move forward? No. Jessica Thompson?
Late night.
If you bring your baby to planning commission, I get to hold him while you talk.
Jessica Thompson, 1414 Northwest 14th Street. I live in Classen Tenpin, and there's a lot to be said about this development, but I won't really go into all that. But I will say, initially, when it was first brought up about the plan, we actually didn't know anything about it until it was time to go to Board of Adjustment. And initially, there wasn't, from the pictures, if you can see, I didn't get the one that I wanted to of the north building, but which would be where it says Common Lot A. There's a big lot of concrete, big driveway, and initially there was kind of like islands of grass. In this case, it's just all concrete, and that was an issue that we had, and that was not what we were. That was not presented to us that it would look like that. Number one. Number two, there's no really front porch or stoop, which is in context with the neighborhood, which is not in context with the neighborhood, and that's what I'm talking about there, where there's a lot of concrete, and that faces Klein. The other deal is that we are concerned that it sets precedents to other builders in the neighborhood that they could end up doing all these curb cuts, where most of the time with apartments and such in the neighborhood, there's really one area where they enter and leave. One thing that they did do was they did the access to the south building from the alleyway, which we asked them to do. However, if you look at, I don't know if it might be in the letter, but there's a picture of the alleyway. It's very torn up, and it used to be a brick alleyway, and you can't really tell anymore. But I feel like in other neighborhoods, I'm just going to throw it out there, you wouldn't see this happen there in the alleyway. And we would like them to correct the alleyway, if possible, put it back to the brick that was there before. It's one of the only brick alleyways in the neighborhood. It's kind of a little treasure there. A lot of people don't notice until you're around the area walking around. So that's one thing with that alleyway I have concern with. It's mucky, it's hard to drive down. I take that way sometimes when I go home. The other part is that I would like to know is, since it is townhomes, is there going to be a common area maintenance fee? And then the other part was that I don't see a lot of landscaping, and from that other picture that I have with the AC units facing Klein, this one, it looks awful driving by, and I'd like to see them do some type of landscaping to cover up that AC. I know something can't be too close to the AC units because they need air to breathe, I guess, but if they can put some kind of landscaping in front of that. I know it's not done yet, but I would also ask if they could put in, I'd like to see 6 trees go in, because I don't know what the landscaping looks like now, and we're trying, it's in the S&I part of the neighborhood. Every year we do tree plantings, and I'd like to see 6 trees, one for every unit that is on each of those, I guess, lots. And that's all I have to address there. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I met with the applicant. My understanding is we got another one?
We do.
Okay, sorry.
Jennifer
I'll wait.
Sylvester.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sylvester. I live at 1121 Northwest 12th Street. We wrote the letter of concern. I'm not sure if you had a chance to read it, and I don't want to go over everything in it. But we were concerned with the process that this went through. We feel like we have no room to have any input on the site design because it went to Board of Adjustments instead of coming here first, which I think it should have. And now that it's built, we really can't say anything about it. And so also, what was the other thing? Sorry. There's a traditional neighborhood overlay so Jessica pretty much said everything that I was going to say, so I'm just going to move on. But we really feel like this is a reason for the traditional neighborhood overlay that's been proposed, because we're just worried about this happening on more lots in we can't help this one, but like Jessica said, this might set a precedent for what people will do in the future, and we just want some way to have more say in how these things are designed and the sites are laid out. So.
One thing I want to point out to you, and I do want to make the comment to the commissioners, is that a person who represented the neighborhood appeared and voiced support for the application.
At Board of Adjustments?
That's correct.
I was at Board of Adjustments.
Yeah. So,
but it wasn't, we couldn't say anything except on the 4 items that they wanted variances on. So,
yeah, the issue here is that the underlying zoning on the property was R3. So instead of coming through a zoning process where there would have been input into the design, once they had a public hearing at the Board of Adjustments, which I'm sure we both remember very well, they were so limited to the specific issues with which they could speak. And frankly, you know, I think we all felt at the time that we were not sure that they were, you know, doing the right thing with respect to what they were asking for and what they were going to end up with.
yeah.
But
There was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of discussion. It was obviously based in variance, and the zoning for what they were doing is appropriate.
But also, because Board of Adjustment is not a collaborative body, there wasn't the opportunity to, you know, get in and kind of sort through it and work it out and come up with a better result. So.
and I just want to say, I think design matters in the urban context, and the flat facade along 13th, if that was my house next door, I would be devastated. Like, you're turning your back on the neighborhood, you're saying, like, I don't want to see you, I want nothing to do with you. I mean, there's nothing in this development that says, like, I'm friendly, I want to be a part of this neighborhood. I mean, you just pull into the garage and you're gone, I guess. I mean, I don't know how I would even knock on a door and get to know this neighbor. So I think the design is really just harmful to that corner. So that's all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down. Mr. Hill, tell me about the alley and what you're going to do to it.
Well, we're going to, whatever the city will allow as far as paving it, we will repave it.
Are we thinking about replacing the bricks?
I don't know if they'll allow us to repave brick and if that's possible, but if not, in concrete or whatever they will allow. And we don't have to do the whole portion, you know, we can come in and patch what was torn up to get to the sewer. But, and I think that as far as, I wasn't involved in it at the Board of Adjustment, so I can't say what the board did. I'm involved in it because what they'd like to do now is they would like to be able to sell the units rather than rent them. And I think that will be good for the neighborhood to have homeowners in the units rather than renters. And so what we're trying to do is by doing this SPUD, and we'll also be presenting a plat to you in the coming weeks, is that to make it so that they'll be able to actually sell the units outright rather than just rent them. And so that's the reason of this SPUD. But we will agree to those technical evaluations, and one of them is to improve the alley. And whether or not it can be improved with brick, I don't know.
Is there the provision for a homeowners association or
Yes, there is. There will be a homeowners association that will own all of the land, and then each individual person will own their individual unit, and it will be extensively landscaped. Obviously, the landscaping is the last thing to go in and hadn't been landscaped yet.
I can't help but feel like this is a case where sort of the cart got before the horse. The buildings got built under straight R3 zoning. Then there were, Board of Adjustment variances for things that didn't quite fit in that mold. And now, because we want to sell them, now we're seeing the zoning, the buildings there, the buildings are there. For all intents and purposes, the the concrete's poured and it is what it is. And that, I can certainly understand why that doesn't feel very good to the people who live nearby.
So my meeting with the applicant, first of all, I agree. I think I'm unhappy with how this project went. I think a lot of these things could have been fixed through the right process. Unfortunately, as has been said, R3 zoning, that was the approach that was taken on it, and so it did not come to a body for that review beyond what's allowed under R3 zoning. The applicant did say that they were amenable to eliminating one of the curb cuts. So we're gonna remove one of the curb cuts. That's an issue.
Actually tear out some concrete.
They're going to improve the entirety of the alley across their portion of property. And I think, as was said, we've got the HOA language in. The process needs to be better, and the applicant understands that. I understand they're doing further projects, and they have hopefully got a grasp on this at this point. So with the TEs that are involved, I mean, unless there's further... Yeah, okay.
Thanks. I'm unfamiliar with this. I'm not in Board of Adjustment. I haven't talked to anybody. That's the front?
That's the front of one of the buildings, yes.
So there's no door besides a garage door?
No.
Is there a door in the back?
I apologize. That is the back of the south building.
That is the back of the south building, or is that the front of the building?
The front has doors.
That's the front.
That's the front. Is
it not?
Are there any doors besides garage doors?
Yeah, I drove this project on the way down here. There are walk-in doors.
That's the north building. The south building has other side of the
two buildings. The building that I was seeing there that had 3 garage doors, are there any other doors on that building?
Yes, on the other side.
Okay. And why don't we have pictures of those?
I did.
Okay, well, it's up there. But
Okay. Mr. Hill, we need to have your remarks on microphone for us, please.
The other pictures are in that group of pictures that show the...
Randy, I think there was, I'm sorry, no, go ahead, Rusty.
Go ahead on that or whatever.
No, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
On that air conditioning point, if this is the front of the buildings, I must say that the utilities and the air conditioning are not conducive to what I would consider urban development or what we'd like to see in this area. I think that those do need to be landscaped or screened. I mean,
they will be both.
It looks like it's hard to tell this is new construction when I look at it, frankly. And that shouldn't be the case, because these doors, as you indicate, with the air conditioners and then the big power boxes right out there in the front, it's not got a lot of a curb appeal. So I want to see I'd like to see some enhanced landscaping specifically to screen those utilities and air conditioners, and make that a TE specifically for that purpose, because it's just not, and I'm not much into design, but I think that's got to be part of this particular one.
We would agree with that.
Yeah, all right, thanks. I'm sorry, Rusty, I didn't mean to.
Sorry, I had taken this off. I don't know what else to ask. I'm not trying to be a design guy, but I can't tell if it's residential or homes or how the firemen get in there to save people or what it is yet. I asked if that was the front or not. You never said yes or no. And maybe you don't have to have a front. I guess nothing requires you to have a front and a back. So I don't know what to ask.
Originally, all the front doors were going to be facing Klein, and in their earlier meetings with the Board of Adjustment and the neighbors and the city staff, it was required that they turn the buildings around and have so that the garages were on the back side and the doors on the front side only on the south building. I was not involved in it at that point. Like I said, I'm trying to get it so that they can sell the units rather than lease the units.
I think we're missing an awful lot of specifics here. Within the application, within the SPUD application, I think. I mean, these screening requirements and things like that are not covered by what they've put. I have very little confidence that unless they're in there, that it will be done.
This is not a comment on you, Mr. Hill, personally, but what we've gotten out of this is not what we would consider to be what we'd like to see in this neighborhood as we try to enhance this neighborhood. So I'm inclined to agree with you, Scott.
Is that a suggestion?
I'm going to recommend to the applicant that you continue the application. I think you're going to need some time before you can come back here. I would suggest you take a month.
So what you would like to see is a landscape plan that is very detailed, showing how it would be landscaped. But I don't know that there's much, we can't really change the units that have just been built.
I understand, but there are things you can do within your landscape requirements to contribute to the neighborhood. There are things you can do within your screening requirements to contribute to the neighborhood. There are things you can commit to as it relates to talking with the city about the alleyway. There's lots of things we can do here that we could specifically put into this SPUD application that I think would go a long way to making people feel a lot more comfortable that what's going to be proposed and shown in a picture is going to be what's produced.
Yes, sir, Commissioner, we will do that.
Yeah, and I might ask too, is because I was confused with what I had. He had more pictures from a different meeting that weren't here. You brought more, but there's still some others. So now understanding there are two buildings and there's, which is which. I couldn't tell from the minimal pictures that were in the packet what was what. So being perfectly clear on which way is pointing which way and how many buildings are there and what are we looking at?
And I would suggest that you specifically address that alleyway.
Yeah.
How it will be paved?
The alleyway, paved or gravelled or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand?
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
What is the motion?
Continue 1 month.
Continue to October the 26th? I have a motion and a
Providing
second.
guidance.
Would you cast your votes, please? It's continued.
Thank you.
Item 18, SPUD 1006, application to rezone 1540 Northwest 30th Street.
Hello, Ken Fitzsimmons with Task Design. On behalf of my clients, Joe and David Carr.
Tell us what you're asking for.
Asking for a SPUD to rezone to allow higher density than straight zoning currently. Had quite a few conversations with you and Commissioner Highsmith yesterday to maybe clarify the goals here, and my clients are okay with that, to limit the number of structures to 2 as shown on the original site plan. That would be the one on the right side of what's on the screen now. And they're okay with limiting the lot splits to 2. So you would have 1 structure on each lot. There are some items that we met with Mr. Chambliss and some of the other folks in zoning and utilities to discuss some of the technical issues related to utilities and trash. And some of those items we'll need to, I don't know if we need to address those in the SPUD, but there were some conflicts that we noted in the correspondence we sent yesterday or a couple of days ago.
Things that we kind of didn't really touch on were the alleyway. What are you going to do with it?
Well, the alleyway will need to be improved, of course. Right now it's non-existent there. To the east of this property, the alley, as I understand, is not closed officially, but it is built upon by all the neighbors. And currently, one of the neighbors is using it as a drive to their place. And so we'd propose to pave the portion that's south of their property and still keep it open then south of them.
And so having focused then on the two structures on a maximum of 2 lots, does that clarify for you how you'll do your ingress and egress and where the parking will be? And I mean,
Yes.
was that sort of an either-or thing with respect to the...
I think we'd still like to have a one-way aisle, as we've shown here, where you come in through the alley or 30th, and you exit that way as well. So it'd be the attempt here is to put the parking behind the building. We want the buildings to be close to the street, so it creates an urban corner there. We'd propose to align the side facing Northwest 30th with the neighbors to the east and west. So again, it kind of creates the urban wall there, if you will. And then that way, what people notice are two smaller buildings or buildings that aren't that large compared to the neighbors, separated rather than building one large 8-unit building and then parking put behind the building.
There are a number of references, I'm sorry, we should have discussed this earlier too, throughout the staff report with respect to the front of the building, and what we're really talking about is the east, or the west side of the building versus the north side of the building.
Correct.
So I want us to go through between now and City Council and get all that cleaned up.
Okay.
And the other thing that I guess, I mean, from the discussion you were just hearing, I would very much like to know that the side of the building facing Northwest 30th Street is not going to present a wall, that it's not going to be a blank that's going to...
And in fact, the site plan that you see up there, it's just a very diagrammatic concept, but the idea is that you would have a porch, a one-story porch on that front building.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have questions? Is there anybody else here who wants to be heard on this matter today? I can't make a motion, or I would.
I'll move approval.
Do I have a second?
I didn't understand that there were any conditions. There's a lot that's been talked about, but I think it's captured in the TEs. So.
I think we're pretty clear.
Yeah.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 18 as discussed. Would you cast your votes, please? It is approved.
Thank you.
Item 19 is SPUD 1010, request to rezone 1301 Northwest 16th Street.
Hi, I'm also involved in this one. My name's not up there. The architect, friend and neighbor, a future neighbor of Casey Thompson here today.
Oh, hello. How are you doing today? Yes, so we have a...
Yes, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Oh, sorry. Casey Thompson, 1301 Northwest 16th Street.
Tell us what you're asking for.
I'm asking to split the lot and add a few units.
Currently, the property would not allow 2 or 4 units as proposed, but we would, as we discussed yesterday with Commissioner Highsmith and Powers, that we would like to have 2 duplexes on 2 lots.
Commissioner Highsmith?
So one of the sticking points for me was the drive, and the drive. So right now they're asking for a 20-foot drive. So really a two-car in to a 2-car garage. And I would prefer to have that, to again, like limit curb cuts. And in a neighborhood setting like this, bring it down to a single 10-foot drive. We did have discussion on a potential compromise, but I did not see, unless I missed something, anything that showed the version of that you were proposing.
Right. We have not created that yet, but I think we'd be okay with adding language in there that the drive could, I think what we talked about was maybe 0 to 15 feet, for example, could be all concrete, and then 15 feet to 20 feet could be a decorative concrete pattern, or maybe a combination of concrete pavers with stone or grass in between to soften the look.
I think without seeing it, I don't know what I'm approving. So, you know, in this case, I'm still inclined to ask for the 10 feet.
Well, we definitely are happy to add that language, and I love the look of that anyways. It gives it a better architectural look, and it's very appealing and unique to the area as well. And as you know, it's a very artsy district, so we would love to add elements that would cultivate that even more so and enhance the curb appeal, literally.
Add what language in it?
So up to 15 feet of solid concrete, and then the addition being 5 feet, the addition being decorative, possibly rectangular concrete pieces with some filler in between, whether it be grass or pebble, something like that that would be appealing to the neighborhood.
Is your curb cut still 20, though?
Yes.
Okay, so I didn't think that was what you were talking about, Commissioner Highsmith.
Right.
I mean, I just wanted to make sure I understand where you were coming from. That sounds like still a 20-foot curb cut and a 20-foot drive, just out of different stuff.
And I understand what Mr. Highsmith is asking for here, but what we're also trying to do is, one of the concepts we had would have a little bit more space behind to the left of the garage, and the idea is that we could have more open area to the backyard from the house, or that might be yard area. So what we're trying to, if we go to a one-car wide drive, the reason we're pushing back on that is that drive is going to have to get longer and extend into the yard more, and we're trying to retain more space for backyard or for the indoor-outdoor connection of the dwelling unit.
I'm going to have to stick with staff's recommendation on this one. I feel like I don't know, I mean, this drive, that we're debating about is depicted on a site plan that really doesn't show us much of anything about how it orients and what it looks like. And I mean, I think I understand there, in looking through the application in preparation for the hearing, I think I understand why they made the recommendation they did on the last one. I think that I understand why they made the recommendation they did on this one. I mean, I don't feel like I am prepared to be able to recommend, especially this one's even, I feel like, less information than I got last time. So I really think we need to add some stuff here and satisfy staff's requirements so that we can review that and make sure we understand really what we're doing. And I think the drive issue that Commissioner Highsmith is bringing up is probably something you need to address in a better layout and site plan.
Okay, so that we can understand, I guess, specifically, if we address the drive issue, do you feel like that's something that you'd be able to support at that point, Mr. Highsmith? Or
Yeah, we don't do that. You were going to want to take
Okay.
a couple of weeks.
Okay, gotcha.
As is usually the case, unless there's some time sensitivity here, I would encourage you to take a continuance to the 26th, which is more adequate time than to try to get this done in 1 week and get it back to staff. So,
I believe we can have it to you within a week, though. That's not a problem.
okie dokie. I will make a motion to, unless there's objection, I'll make a motion to continue the application to October 12th.
We want to kind of get a better look at the site overall, if I understand the ask here. That'd be my request, drive, et cetera. I can't really tell how things are oriented particularly. So,
that works for me.
Thanks.
I have a motion and a second to continue item number 19 until October the 12th. Would you cast your votes, please? It's continued.
Thank you for your time.
Item 20, PUD 1649, application by MTZ Construction to rezone 3028 Southwest 157th Street.
To give us your name and address for the record, please?
Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Jeffrey Trent. I'm the attorney for the applicant. This is Mr. Conrado Martinez, who is one of the owners of the company who is requesting the application change. With all due respect, what we're asking...
I'm sorry, did you give us your address?
Pardon?
Did you give us your address?
Do I?
Your address.
I'm the attorney.
Would you give us your address, please? We need it for the record.
I don't understand what you're saying, ma'am.
Would you give us your address, please, for the record?
A physical address.
Oh, Mr. Conrado's name or my address?
Your address.
915 West Main, Yukon, Oklahoma, 73099.
Thank you.
Do you need my phone number, ma'am?
No?
I am so sorry. I thought that information was available to the commission. What my client is proposing to do is to build a building with 2 lean-tos that are open so that their equipment that they own can be stored out from the hail, rain, weather, and things like that. There was one thing I wanted to mention in the staff report that was submitted to the Planning Commission. It specifically stated that we were requesting for the construction of a company office. And with all due respect, we have no intentions of having an office at the location. We have one already been established for several years. The buildings that we've asked to be built is going to be simply so that equipment can be put in it or stored under lean-tos that will be constructed on the site. I have submitted, and I believe the Commission has copies of the drawings. What you're looking at right there is an aerial photo looking from the south to the north, and you can see where we have gone ahead and proposed to have the north 10 acres of this 20. If you look closely at that area, you'll see there's a large transmission line that would restrict any kind of construction on the south part of the 20. That's the reason we adopted the north 10 acres. Also, it was our desire, where you can see the Drexel runs north and south on the west side of the property, that we would continue to bring the Oklahoma City sewer from the north side of 157th south along the entire 10 acres so that it could be used for future use, but would be constructed in accordance with the Oklahoma City regulations. In your plans, you will see that there was a design of that also submitted. The picture that you're looking at there is 157th, and it's looking to the north of our property. The property on the east side, the road on the east side, is actually May Avenue, which is the major thoroughfare in this area. It goes north and south the entire road of the city, but just on the south part outside of that picture area is where the city of Oklahoma City has its water treatment plant. One of the things that I would like you to look closely at is there's the water treatment plant right there that you see, that particular area, which is the top of the screen. May Avenue runs diagonally there across the bottom of it. One of the things that I would hope that you would recognize that in this particular area, it is zoned agriculture, and my clients for years now have maintained the property and even taken the ditch that carries the water from the south part of the property, cleaned it out, widened it, and made it so that the flow of any water created because of the building would in fact be increased and enhance the property in that way. What you're looking at right there is the site plan showing the building itself and then the 2 canopies that we would park our equipment under. The north part is 157th. There would be an entrance onto the property, and then there would be another major entrance off of 157th, off of Drexel, and that was at the request of the planning department. When we took the unit down there, they wanted to be certain that they had two entrances and accesses to the property. The little circle at the top is an existing pond that has been there for a long time. The water and utilities, which come from the city of Oklahoma City, come from May Avenue along the north part of the property. And as you can see, if you look closely to the design on the west side, that's where we would put the new sewer system, which would go underneath 157th and tie into the existing Oklahoma City sewer system. That would take care of any of the issues that would happen for waste that would be created in and under those two buildings. It is the desire of our client to work with the planning department and members to arrive at a unit that is enclosed on a cement floor, a barn, so that if they had equipment that needed to be taken away from things, that it would be safely put there. And to make certain that the surrounding members of the community were not offended, we were going to build an 8-foot metal fence. It'd be at least 6, but our design was 8, to go completely around it so that anything that was going on or left out there would in fact all be encompassed inside that particular unit, inside a metal fence. There was at one time some complaint that we were bringing in dirt and that was going to cause excess water flowing. The purpose of the dirt was simply that this is the lowest part of the land right now, and that's what caused the pond over there. And so we were bringing the dirt up high enough so that it wouldn't fall into the flood area, because this is part of the flood area of the Canadian River, and it's like a 500-year flood area, and so we wanted to be certain that the base of the unit would be well above that and would not be an obstruction to anything or excessive water and things like that. All of the plans that I had submitted with you have been drawn up in accordance with the city regulations and the various controls that are required, and we have complied with everything that each of the units that have input into it, the sewer department, the planning, the EPA, all of those have all had a say-so, and they've been part of the design, and that we've submitted copies to you. And like I said, the building will be a metal structure covered with a metal building, and the area that you're looking at right there is the 10 acres that we're planning. The little box in the corner is where the actual building would be. There would be a road to the north, which is attached to 157, and a road to the west, which is attached to Drexel.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions for the applicant before we ask for?
I will have some questions first, if you don't mind. The staff report did say the construction of it says a construction company office building. He said that was not the case. How did we get, is that?
Let me, before do I understand that there is a business being operated on this property? It is a construction business, they office there, they store their...
No, I'm sorry, Your Honor. The office is in a completely different location. What we were going to do, the building, was to be able to have a place...
Now, I'm not talking about the building that you're proposing to construct. There's not a business that's being run on this property?
There is not a building on that 10 acres.
I'm not asking you about a building. There's a construction company that stores its equipment here. There's not an office there. You're saying there's no building, there's no office. No.
Okay.
Or is there a home?
On the south, see where the proposed area is for the North 10? If you look down on the south end of that, you'll see there's a trailer house right there at the very south part of it. and the daughter of Mr. Conrado lives in that trailer house.
Okay. And so my main question for staff is then, he's not contradicting his application, and for some reason it may have been perceived that way by staff, but you don't have something contradictory. He's not trying to construct or to build a construction company office, because that changed the whole application to me. It's not going to be a construction company office, right?
There will be no
And so
construction.
there's nothing contradictory from the staff. Okay. Second is the staff report says this is going to be located on a neighbor. Yeah.
On that point, one of the uses that they are requesting is administrative and professional offices,
Your Honor,
further limited to a construction company office.
Okay.
So that is part of the application.
Okay. And so is that something you don't need as a use then?
well, there was a misunderstanding, and we're really, Your Honor, we're not quite sure.
Don't call me that.
Your Honor.
I'm not a judge.
Madam Chairman, with all due respect, until we got the staff report, we never understood how that got there, because there is absolutely no sales office, no construction office. There's nothing in the plans that even indicates an office. It's going to be a barn with some doors on it. We can drive the equipment in and shut it. There'll be lean-to it. They can drive them under in case it's hailing or raining or off from the sun. But there's no business construct. They have and have been in business for a long time.
Okay, so it seems like you might be amenable then to eliminating some of the uses that would be permitted if we approved your application. You don't need some of these uses like a professional office.
None, no office.
Second question is the staff report said it would be located on a neighborhood street. I mean, unless I don't understand a neighborhood, what is the neighborhood street? I know there are people that are living out there, but it's agriculture everywhere, so I don't see what I would consider a neighborhood street. Is that right?
What you have is just a series of large lot, residential, agricultural properties
But is any
that
one of these
access all
something-
these streets.
What's that?
But they access all these streets. Those homes and those properties are accessed from these
But
streets.
when I got to the pictures, I was expecting to see a neighborhood. It looks to me like it's ag, and some people live there, and some people farm there, and some people do different things. So I want to make sure I wasn't missing a neighborhood street as I think of it. Maybe there's no definition of a neighborhood street. And the last question I had before, I know some other people want to speak. I may have lost my notes. Where was it? Give me 1 second.
I think actually there is a definition of a neighborhood street. It
Is
may
there?
just not be quite what you think it is.
But if there is a definition, then which street is the neighborhood street? Is that inaccurate to say they want to locate on a neighborhood street?
It'd be Drexel in this case, wouldn't it, JJ? Because May should be an arterial. Is it 157th, Gary? Oh, yeah, you're probably right, yeah.
I would say 157th and Drexel. It's a
Okay, so that is a neighborhood street.
Rural neighborhood
It's a
street.
rural neighborhood street that they want to locate on. Okay. And then the last question I have before any comments is, well, we kind of got into it with the uses. I'm not sure that what they really want is uses. I'm curious if they're wanting to do anything different in the future that they can't do under agriculture. They only need something approved because they want to build the lean-tos. If I've narrowed down the real request, maybe you can't answer that, staff, or Madam Chairwoman, maybe it's back to you, but are you wanting to do anything different other than build the lean-tos? And the reason I ask that, and I see some people may be ready to speak, but I'm just curious what you want to do differently after you build the lean-tos that you're not already doing zoned agriculture.
Well, with all due respect, there would be two lean-tos that would be separate and not connected to a building that would have doors to shut it completely off.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and...
So there's actually three structures. One fully enclosed with doors to open so you can drive in and out, and then two lean-tos that you could park stuff under.
Okay.
The lean-tos could be agricultural buildings. What's different here is what they want to use them for, what they want to put in them, is construction company equipment, backhoes,
Is
graders.
storing that type of equipment permissible under AA?
That's my question.
No.
No. I understand. Is operating a business defined in our ordinances? How do we determine if somebody, the context you see it in most regularly is in somebody trying to run something out of a home. Is there a definition in the ordinance?
I don't know if there's a definition. It's tough to define and enforce. In this case, we have construction equipment coming and going daily from the site.
Do employees congregate at this location for any reason?
Would you repeat that,
Do
please?
they come to this location? Do employees come here as a part of their regular routine of their jobs?
No.
Who moves the equipment?
They go straight to the job site.
Okay. So,
Let me make sure I heard the answer to the question several had. So the storage of construction equipment, and what I see in one of these pictures looks like it's already going on, would not be permitted by agriculture?
That's right.
That was a no. I didn't hear a no.
That's really what
Somebody
this
said no,
comes
it would
down
not be
to.
allowed.
What it is physically that they're wanting to build is, probably not that different than a barn. It's probably, it's not, that's not really the issue.
I understand, but was that a no? They are not permitted under agriculture zoning to
That's a
store
no.
construction equipment? Okay.
And with respect to people coming to the site, I assume someone comes and gets the equipment every day.
Yes.
So congregate, I guess, is a loose term. Okay. Anything else?
Did you have any other questions?
Anything else of the applicant? We have several people.
When we're speaking of equipment, are we talking bulldozers, dump trucks, cement trucks? What kind of equipment? Describe the equipment that will be stored, coming and going.
Construction equipment.
Big equipment.
Nothing like dump trucks or anything.
Big equipment.
Like backhoe, but not dump trucks. You have dump trucks.
How big is your dump truck?
I'm sorry, what?
10 wheels. So it's the smaller one, not the big giant one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
We just want that for parking inside the 9.
Thank you.
I have several people who are signed up to speak. If you'll take a seat, please. I'll try. Patricia Podolik. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm Patricia Podolik. I'm an attorney with Foshee and Yaffe at 12231 South May Avenue in Oklahoma City. I've been hired by pretty much all the homeowners around the property to kind of present their views, but we did bring a few homeowners that want to speak also. I listened to them say they're not going to be operating a business out of this area. It might be semantics, but they are operating a business. The only other, their website shows an address, and did you all receive the objections we filed? Okay. So the website shows an address. It's a residential area in Oklahoma City that's not, it's not an office area. It's not zoned to be an office area. That's where they're operating their office out of. There's no other place we could find for them to operate. Their employees are coming to that site, parking their vehicles and leaving. We have passed out some pictures taken through the, over the months. He talked about improving the area. The flooding in some of these pictures that we're showing you has been since they've started dredging and moving dirt. They're flooding the neighbor's property. They're in a flood zone. It's to be expected, I guess. It will get worse when they put this building up that they called a storage barn in their original application. We passed some pictures, just some photos that were just taken today, and there's some in here, showing this is heavy industrial equipment. This is the contractor that does the sidewalks for the city of Oklahoma City. They bring in heavy industrial equipment. They dig everything out, they load the dirt up, they take it back to this property. They are operating a business that's zoned agriculture, and this is not in the fringes of any industrial area where it might be encroached on. This is a true agricultural area. It has been like that for generations. The people that live here, a lot of them have lived there for generations. They have lived there because the property is in the country. It's zoned agriculture. Oklahoma City has a very nice definition of agriculture, which I know you all know, so I won't go back over it. But I will point out that the ordinance says that barns such as, it allows barns such as others agriculturally related structures. This is not related to agriculture. This is not an agricultural business. This is a construction company. I will point out that several of the elected officials for the area have been out there and looked at it, and I know you all know I included their objection to it, but it includes the county commissioner for Cleveland County for the area. They all object to this. It is not related to the agricultural nature of this part of Oklahoma City. It is on the very south fringes. It's in a flood zone area, and it's causing flooding already. These people have put up with enough. These are narrow streets that are not designed for this kind of equipment, and yet they're driving up and down the streets, tearing up the roads. I know, having been live on a street that's somewhat similar, I know that it's probably not in the latest plan to repave these streets and make them where they can support this kind of equipment. This is an industrial company, construction company, operating their business in an area that's zoned agriculture. I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I do have some others here to speak.
Thank you.
Do you have any record of how often these vehicles go back and forth?
I have homeowners that live there that they can tell you how many times they operate back and forth. I know they laid the sidewalks in front of our office, so I know they were going there at least twice a day because that's where they were taking their equipment at night, and that's where they're taking the dirt that they dug up. So I know they go out at least twice a day, going in, going out.
Chris Brewster, would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Chris Brewster. I live at 3140 Southwest 157th, 73170. I come today on behalf of 33 of the 36 immediately affected households in the area. Those are houses that are down 157th, 164th, and on May. In addition, there are 5 other households adjacent that are somewhat affected who also oppose this. We live in this neighborhood because we choose to. We've survived floods, 2 major tornadoes, all kinds of changes. Our community is very, very diverse. We have folks that have lived in trailer homes and some that live in more than $1 million homes. Very diverse families. It's a rich neighborhood, and we've all chosen, rich in community, if not in money. We've all chosen to live there because of the way that this place has been laid out and allowed to flourish by the city. Each lot is between 5 and 20 acres, so we've got good space between us. We have the opportunity, for example, in my house, we have 2 dogs and 2 cats. We have 3 geese, 2 ducks, 30 chickens, 7 kids, and 1 very tolerant wife, all in my household. And they all enjoy this area, as do many of the families that surround us. We've been there for 11 years. Most of the residents have been there much longer than we have. Back in the early 90s, this city opposed a similar development, a commercial development that was taking place on the very same grounds. This was a residential area established for the purpose of people having peaceful homes near the city, but still with the joys of living in the country. We lived there very much on purpose. I have great respect for MTZ and the company that's been built, for the excellence that they have in construction, for the way that they treat their employees and their equipment. In fact, they have about 24 pieces of equipment, several $1 million of equipment parked in our neighborhood right now. They maintain it well. Their property is well maintained. They do great work. We've seen it all throughout the city, up and down May most recently. They have all the gravel piled on the property, which they take down for the project, and they bring the dirt back for the infill. So we see this all the time. They're a very busy company, so your question was how often. They're up and down that road all day long, every day. The employees do come, park their vehicles, and they get the vehicles that they're going to be using or the equipment and take it to the job site and bring it back. There's no question in our mind that this is a business. In fact, as Patricia mentioned, their only primary place of business now is a residence in Southwest 37th Street, a home. There's no question of not only are they now running a business, but intend to run this as a commercial business, and a successful one at that. We would like to let you know, in fact, if you're a resident of this community, would you raise your hand at this time? These folks here represent about 1/3 of those who are in strong opposition to the PUD 1649. I stand to answer any questions about my own personal experience, but we strongly appreciate your support in opposing this reuse of this property where we live.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions of Mr. Brewster? I have also the other Chris Brewster signed up to speak. You're fine? You're
Was
good?
my wife deferring?
You're going to let your husband speak for you? Okay. Commissioners, I mean, it seems to me like this is fairly self-explanatory. The question is whether we want to permit the operation of business on this agricultural property, whether this is an appropriate location for the storage of construction vehicles. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
What zoning would be required to allow for that use?
I-2.
That's what I figured.
I-3.
So, I mean, to me, this is a really easy case. The use and density, which are the two objective standards that we look at, and I can look at the comp plan, I can look at the existing use, I can look at the infrastructure, and I can see that it would not support a reclassification to I-2. That's not what was asked, but I sure couldn't support that. I can't speak for other commissioners, but I sure wouldn't support that in this area. Whether or not we can dance around from a legal standpoint about what constitutes the operation of a business or not, or we can avoid it by taking on some activity or another, at the end of the day, I'm not convinced that this property is being used in accordance with its current zoning. And I certainly can't support the application on all of those grounds. And for me, it's not even close. So I'm not going to be able to support your application today.
Is that a motion?
If there's no other comment, then that'd be a motion to deny the application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to deny item number 20. Would you cast your votes, please? It is denied. We're going to take a short break before we launch into the next item. Let's take until 3:30.
I know.
Maybe they won't recognize.
Yeah, that's good.
Let's come back to order. Next item, item number 21.
Item 21 is SPUD 1000, application by Brahms Ice Cream and Dairy Stores to rezone 2701 Northwest 50th Street.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here today on behalf of the applicant. I also have representatives from Brahms as well as the civil engineer. This is a case that is a bit unique in that where it lies is in an area that, for all intents and purposes, is heavily commercialized, yet what we are faced with here on the subject site is an R1 zoning. A lot of the discussion before the meeting, in a neighborhood meeting we had, has dealt with the existence of a building that is on the site outside of the SPUD. The current building that is there now is immediately west of what you see on your map shown as R1. Because I think it's important as the Planning Commission considers this application and ultimately renders a decision, I do want the seller's representative, Mr. Dave Kennedy, he is a representative of the individual that currently owns what is shown as C4, to come up and just say a couple words about the building.
Hi there. My name is Dave Kennedy. My address is 1601 Northwest Expressway in Oklahoma City. I represent the owner of the property, Red Oak Properties, and it owns all of the surrounding property that is shaded in surrounding the property that's actually covered by this case. The staff put out a report asking that the rest of that property be incorporated into this SPUD, and I wanted to come and say, so that you really heard it from the horse's mouth, that the owner of the property is not willing to subject the remainder of the site, which has C4 zoning, to this SPUD. The other topic that I wanted to raise was essentially this. The owner of the property has owned this property since 1994, and its intention is either to sell the property to Brahms or alternatively to redevelop the property on its own next spring. So you'll have a lot of protesters here, a lot of people that want to talk about the Dene building. The long-term prognosis, short-term prognosis for that building, though, is if we do not sell our property to Brahms, we alternatively are going to redevelop the property and demolish it next spring. So if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to field those.
Madam Chairman, I'll just ask, you say
owner of the adjacent property is not willing to subject it to this spud. Why?
Because it has C4 zoning on the remainder of that property, and that's really quite valuable, and, we prefer that it stay C4.
And not to beat it, but then you recognize the staff does prefer that you include it, or that that owner include it in order to facilitate the requested application today.
Yes, I understand that.
Just out of, so he wants to, in other words, the goal of your owner is to either sell the Brahms or redevelop in some fashion the remaining C4 property that he owns.
That's correct.
Which, based on what you've told me, would include the demolition of the existing structures that are on the C4 property, or the Donnay building at least.
The Donnay building would be demolished. The other building, that's not quite as certain.
Not quite as certain, but certainly the Donnay. Okay.
Yes.
And so he wants to preserve this intense commercial uses that he owns on this corner.
Yes, there's C4 zoning.
In the absence of selling it to Brum. So as a question of practice here, if the SPUD is approved, he would sell his property subject to the SPUD, to Brahms, right?
Correct.
He would Brahms would take the property subject to this SPUD.
He's already contracted to sell the remaining property and 4 lots to Brahms.
Okay.
So if Brahms is successful with its spud,
they consolidate.
He's obligated to sell to them.
Understood. Thank you. That's helpful.
But of course, I know you understand that that doesn't mean that somehow the rest of the property would be magically subject to the SPUD.
I understand.
And to your question, if you look at the provision that staff cites for their justification to bring the whole thing in, it's found at page 12 of your staff report, paragraph 6. It's the first bullet point. And what it says is, encourage unified planning for all adjoining land, and this is the key, owned or controlled by a project's developer. We don't own it and we don't control it. In order to control it, it would take a letter of authorization from the current owner to authorize us to zone it. The owner is unwilling to do that. Therefore, we cannot meet this. We don't have control or ownership.
And when you say we, you mean your applicant Brahms?
Correct.
He was representing the current owner?
Yes.
And the current owner does own all of it, is that correct?
He owns all of it except for 2 lots. If you see the residential piece, it's actually 6 residential lots. Brahms owns the first 2 lots. The current owner owns these 4 lots and the balance of the C4.
Okay, but nobody besides those 2, Brahms and the current owner of the others, they're the only 2 that own any of this?
Yes, sir, within this property. That is correct. So that's why we can't meet that provision, and that's why we can't bring it in. So to Mr. Hensley's point, yes, if we are successful and we close, we would then own it, and what we would have is a Brahms that at least the majority of our building would lie within this spud. But what you'd essentially have is a downzoning of the entirety. One more point on the building that I'd like the city attorney to weigh in on. It is my position that the demolition of the building is not at issue and is not proper whatsoever in your deliberations here, but I want the city attorney to comment on that.
I would agree that the demolition is not before you today.
Okay.
And it's not a part of this rezoning application.
So with that, what we have is an anomaly. We've got residential zoning surrounded by C4 and office. It is worth noting that you'll see 2 R1 properties immediately south of our site. That individual that owns those properties came to the neighborhood meeting. She is very much supportive of our application. What she told everyone at the neighborhood meeting, and she was quoted in the paper, is that the existence of these bars and the way that the site is currently developed is a big problem. She has people parking in her lawn. She has trash on a daily basis. So she is very much supportive. Additionally, I don't know if it was in your packet, but staff did hand me an email that came in, looks like this morning, by a Betty Thompson, I believe. And she likewise lives close, I believe on 43rd, and voiced her support. So why I say this case is an anomaly, because if we took the converse, and I was here to try to get C4 approved, everybody would say, absolutely not. I mean, we don't grant it. As a city anymore, the city has taken a position that we don't allow C4. It is incompatible, frankly, with everything because of the uses that it allows.
If I may, maybe I'm repeating myself and I shouldn't, but making it unique, though, if the owner would be willing, I know he doesn't want to, but if he would be willing to subject the adjacent properties to the SPUD, this would be even simpler.
Unfortunately, we are where we are. And so the way I see this is there are two options. Brahms is able to get their SPUD approved, and they're able to construct a Brahms on this site. Or they don't get it approved, and the owner goes and wipes these buildings and develops under current C4 regulations, which would allow every use you can imagine and no restrictions on anything. So I don't think I'm oversimplifying it. That is essentially what is before the commission today. It's, what would you rather have, a Brahms, or would you rather have these buildings demolished and development under C4? I think from a use perspective, I think people would agree that Brahms would be the preferred choice based upon what could potentially go there. We spent a lot of time at the neighborhood meeting hoping to hear issues about the site, and that didn't really happen. So we're happy to visit any issues that the commission has. When we met with various commission members, specifically Mr. Highsmith, you had asked if we could redesign it. We tried our best, and there's just not a way to redesign this in a manner that allows this use to go here.
And why is that? Speak to that if you don't mind.
Sure. Primarily, the drive-through component makes it a challenge. So when you look at how this site lays up, you've got 3 access points: Classen Circle, Military, and then one on 50th. When you start shoving that building to the west, what you do is you get close to cutting off that access point onto Classen Circle, and then what you also do is you force the parking on the east of the building. By doing that, you're putting most of your parkers are parking and walking through drive-through traffic, and that's a big point of conflict, and that's a problem. Additionally, you don't want to flip the drive-through, the back side of a building, to be the focal point on Classen Circle. You want that to be the pretty side of the building. So the way the site's laid out now affords us the opportunity to put the drive-through to the east and then heavily landscape that east and southern portion so as to block the drive-through portion of the building. If you see the C4 to the north and the east, there's a large hotel there. So again, our hope is by pushing it over here, we're able to shield it from the local people that might live south and east and the traveling public coming from the east to the west with that landscaping, while all the while allowing the southwest portion of the site to have perhaps more low-profile landscaping to have visual interest brought into the site. So when you look at our application, it's a modified SPUD with very few use units. There was a request that we take out the gasoline sales large. We are willing to take that out. So what we're asking for is a modified C3 with just a handful of uses, all geared towards what we're doing, next to C4, and next to additional C4, and next to office. I would submit that a use-only view of that, this makes sense. Modified C3 next to C4 and office, from a use perspective, makes sense.
So of the use units that are presented in the application, the one remaining that has been removed in addition is gasoline sales large?
Yes,
correct?
that was a request of a
Okay,
commissioner
and
today.
that's
We
it?
agree.
That's the only, everything, okay.
That's right.
Just to fully understand, so after this is done, we'll have C3 where the R1 is now.
You'll have the SPUD.
In the SPUD, and then we'll have C4 surrounding.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Both on this site and north and east of us.
And who will own it? If we approve the application, who owns the various properties you just described.
So if we ultimately gain approval through the city council, Brahms would be contractually obligated to acquire the whole site being, the triangle. And so at that moment, Brahms would then own the site, and they would own it subject to the SPUD that would be in place, and they could then go develop their Brahms store, as you see here.
Subject to the SPUD and the C4.
Yes, ma'am. But
Just want to be clear.
absolutely. But, if you look at the site plan, what we want to do is build a Brahms. And we can't control that we can't get ability to zone the C4, but what we're going to do is build a Brahms. And when you look at the site, it doesn't afford us another opportunity to put other uses other than the Brahms store and associated parking.
So on the, if I could, on the R1, the SPUD that's before us today.
Yes, sir.
The application that's before us today, if you will. There's a sign that's set out here that's a small, how tall is that sign?
We allow for
this one's here.
Yes.
That's going to go on the 50th Street site?
Or perhaps even within the site itself.
Within the site itself?
Yes.
And
As a wayfinding.
Right. And that's how big? How tall is that?
6 feet.
6?
5 to 6 feet.
Okay. And then, all right, thanks.
We have a number of people who are signed up to speak. I think I'll hold my own comments until after we've heard from them. Before we start that process, I just want to say, we're going to go through this. We're here for the long haul. We're going to be civil. Everybody's going to be nice. We're going to play well together. We're not going to talk about a few things today. The buildings actually are not on that list. What we're not going to talk about today is whether or not Oklahoma City needs another Brahms. There were comments to that effect made at the public meeting that we attended last week. That's not before us. We're also not going to talk about whether there's some other place nearby that would be a better site than this site is. That's not our job. We're not going to talk about, corporate greed and how Brahms is in it to make money. They're a business. They're in it to make money. And I am going to allow some limited, and I stress that word, discussion about the existing buildings and whether it would be appropriate to preserve them. May let that comment be made and ask for a show of hands, and then we're going to move on to other issues. So if those persons present who wish to be heard on this matter have a spokesperson or 2 or 3 that they would like to recommend go first, that's fine with me. Otherwise, I'll just go through my list. You'll come forward, please, and give us your name and address.
Hello, my name is Lynn Rostashol. My address is 3209 Robin Ridge Road, Oklahoma City, 73120. Thank you very much. It's tough to begin on this. I think I'll start with a little bit about the Dene building itself, since you've allowed us to do that. The Dene building is one of the first examples of mixed-use architecture in Oklahoma City. The only building I know that had mixed use before that was the new weight cleaners at May and 30th. So this building was shops, offices, residential long before anything else. And now it's so trendy mixed use that it's really kind of nice to have this early example still with us that harkened all of the other things that have happened since. In addition, there are 4 thriving businesses in this building. that have been there forever and that are icons in our community. I think that we need to take into consideration all of the families that will be impacted by this Brahms store if those businesses are taken out. The thing I'd like to also discuss is just the infrastructure. I mean, everybody who has lived in Oklahoma City any amount of time knows what a mess Classen Circle is. Right now, the buildings that are there, you know, you do get traffic in them, but it's going to be nothing like what is going to happen when Brahms comes in. And I would really hope that, although they don't have to, that someone would recommend doing a traffic study before these buildings are knocked down and it's too late, and they do a traffic study after the fact. I would like to see something like that done beforehand, because the neighborhood already is congested, and it is a residential area, and people are going through the very few through streets there are, and that is going to be much worse if this is constructed, because no one's going to want to go through all of that. They're going to take shortcuts through the neighborhood. Also, Mr. Box mentioned the R1, the owner of the two R1 properties there, and how she was dissatisfied with what is there now. She bought the building 17 years ago. The high-low's been there over 50 years. So she knew what she was buying when she came into that neighborhood. I just would ask that we need to look at the bigger picture on this. This is not about these little residential properties here. Two of the homes have been demolished. One is still there. This is encroachment on a neighborhood. It's happening in this particular neighborhood up off of Western as well. And I think it's very important to keep the neighborhood feeling like a neighborhood and not turn the whole thing into, you know, through streets and traffic and commercial buildings everywhere. I just think it's really important to take a step back and consider this and maybe do some traffic studies before we move ahead with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that's ready to speak, or shall I just go through my list?
Didn't expect a full house, so I didn't make enough copies. This is a map.
Give us your name and address for the record, please, and at the microphone, please.
My name is Tanya Felter. I live at 1415 Northwest 24th Street, Oklahoma City 73106. And this map is to reiterate the traffic problems that happened because of a confluence of one-way streets and two-way divided, six-lane, very busy streets, and what happens as a result. The color codings will show that there are very few thoroughfare entrances and exits to the building. The other colors are to represent the shortcuts that are taken through Helms Deep neighborhood to either get in or get out. And there's a lot of them are not even one or the other. One of them are specific sometimes because there's just very little way in and out of this area where people are cutting off, trying to go through the light at 50th and avoid traffic. It's a very, very confusing area, and no business, Brahms or any, that is going to bring heavy traffic into the area can live in this area, because it's just going to make the congestion dangerous, because the shortcuts taken through are going to increase. And there's, you know, pets and kids walking around. So any high-density traffic that will add to this will simply add a fact of danger even. So no Brahms with fast food, no one that has in-and-out business. The reason that it's not a major problem right now is because the businesses that are there not only have staggered hours of business, but they also have a clientele that goes in and stays for a while. So the traffic isn't in and out and super heavy. My second point is to also reiterate the importance of the building as a structure. It was built as a speakeasy. I can't think of really any others
in this country, much less the world, that are built like this. All the rooms connect. It's unique. There's no other place like it. The Hilo not only is one of the oldest existing music venues in town, but it is also the oldest remaining gay bar in town and is important to both of these communities. And I'm actually beginning the process with the Historical Society right now to get the Hilo registered nationally as a gay bar, and so thus it should have historical protection. And that's all I really had to say today. I'm sure there's others that really want to speak as well.
Thank you for coming. So before we go further, can I ask, just for a show of hands, how many people think that the buildings ought to be preserved? Should be. Should be. So that's quite a few people. And I think we've said all that we need or can say about that today. As we go through, with respect to the other people who want to speak, if you would address the other issues that are before us, that would be very helpful. Do I have a Mark Falk?
My name is Mark Falk. My address is 803 Northwest 32nd. I'm a lifelong fourth-generation Oklahoman. I won't speak to the historical significance of this, but I will speak to the ill-advised plans that Brahms has presented. And now they've upped the ante by apparently threatening to have the building bulldozed even if they don't win. First of all, I'd like to point out that that is not something I think you guys need to consider. That's an idle threat. They have threatened more intense businesses if it is bulldozed. Again, an idle threat. And I believe that if this is not upzoned, the configuration of the property will restrict any businesses that can move into there. It is right now configured for what it can be used for. I want to go further on the traffic on this. If you have looked at this, I don't know if you guys have driven around there. I hope that you do before you approve this. 4 times we've reconfigured that area at the cost of probably tens of millions of dollars. If Brahms moves in there and the intensity of the traffic is as bad as it's going to be, you will have to reconfigure it again. This area will not stand that amount of traffic. If you look at the map up here, when you come in off of Classen and you go through the proposed Brahms parking lot, when you pull back out onto 50th, you cannot go back onto Classen. All you can do is pull into the residential area. We had people at the here at the meeting that Brahms had who said that already there is a lot of traffic there. Students from McGinnis walk home from school every day. Imagine the thousands of cars from Brahms going down, not 49th, because you still end up in a configuration where you just go in a circle. There literally is no exit until you go to 48th Street and drive straight through a residential neighborhood. That is a major, major problem. And unless the city is prepared to bulldoze and reconfigure this just to accommodate the 25th Brahms in Oklahoma City at the cost to taxpayers, I think this is a horrible idea. Secondly, you have already turned down requests on Western, where considerable money has been spent to make that a pedestrian-friendly area as we've reconfigured the streets there. So you've turned down businesses who wanted to expand their parking lots into the residential neighborhoods, which would make that more of a high density and a less of a residential pedestrian-friendly area. This will set a precedent. If you reconfigure these residential areas and allow them to encroach upon residential property, you will have businesses up and down Western coming back to you wanting to bulldoze houses behind them and expand into further residential areas. The continued encroachment into the residential areas by Brahms or any other business is a problem. Lastly, there are people who would like to buy and preserve this building. Owners of businesses on Western were at the last meeting that Brahms had, and there were people who said they will put offers on the table So the threat that this will be bulldozed is an unnecessary threat. I believe it's an idle threat. I believe it's shoddy tactics on the part of the attorney for Brahms, and I don't mean that as an insult, but I think they're not sticking to the issue. The issue is that in its present form, this will not be upgraded into a massive high-traffic area unless you allow this rezoning. And I just urge that you, at the very least, postpone this and do a traffic study, or just drive through it yourself and then try to get back out onto Classen, and you'll find out that it can't be done without driving through residential neighborhoods and endangering not just the residents, but the kids walking back and forth from school. So thank you.
Thank you. Vicki Broderick? Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Vicki Broderick. I live at 1203 Northwest 44th Street. So I'm in Helm Farm, and I'm just 6 blocks south on Military of this area in question. And I do address also the traffic issue, and in addition to that, people line up to pick up their kids from Horace Mann School, all up and down Military and other east and west streets. So that is already a busy traffic area in the afternoons, mostly in the afternoons. We do have businesses that are aligned in our neighborhood that create a good mix as into our neighborhood, our residential, but a big box business such as this at the north end of Helm Farm, I think will detract from our neighborhood. There are residential lots there that I think it would be detrimental to the neighborhood to rezone, because that is just chipping away at our residential area. It happens one place, and then it happens another little part of a block someplace else, and our comfortable neighborhood residential area just gets chipped away little by little. And I think that's really one of the important parts of it. I mean, businesses come and go, buildings, but we try to maintain our neighborhood as a place that people want to live and feel safe in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Larson, is it Kesso? Kiso. Good afternoon.
Mary Larson, Kiso, 2401 South Spruce Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Little background here. I'm going to read because I would get distracted. There's a lot of things to address here. And it's very difficult with what they've done, saying, reference the property owner's Red Oak, not wanting to put it. Can you put up that one with the Brahms proposed that was up there at the very beginning? I actually turned in some paperwork on this that you probably have too. But everybody speaks of traffic. And background, former air traffic control, retired after 25 years. The key to that was look at the flow, see what's going to happen. What's going to happen here, and once again, don't talk about the demolishing the building. We'll see there's still going to, if Brahms goes in here and you do approve this zoning, this is what's going to happen right there. Look at where the exit is out on Classen Circle. It goes right into the actual That's a bad drawing. Air traffic control, we talk about hot spots. Did you get any of my stuff that I turned in on Friday? Do you have a 13-page from Mary Cuso in there? There were 13 pages, some handwritten, that I turned into the planning and zoning across the street, so it would be here and be able to be put up there. Apparently not. That's me. That's me.
So then we have it in our packet.
You have it?
Yeah.
Okay, if you will look at page 13 of that, when you look at this and they've got all the straight lines drawn out of there for Classen Circle and for Northwest Expressway and for Classen, they are not actually straight. This is actual visual picture on it, is page 13 of what I delivered. And these are hot spots. There is no legal left turn out of the one-way that is Classen Circle to get onto Northwest Expressway. The only way you can come out on Military and get onto Classen Circle and cut across to get westbound onto Northwest Expressway and Classen. It's a hot spot. People are going to be coming out of here where they've got their driveway and trying to dart across traffic. Now, everybody is talking about traffic. AADT has been doing traffic counts in this area, and in 2015, Northwest 50th, in 2015, average daily traffic count was 3,870. Northwest Expressway coming out, and that was eastbound, was in the 22,000 cars daily. Northwest Classen, northbound, 44,000 cars daily, and that was taken at 47th Street. That's 60,000 cars that are going through that intersection every day. Now, taking into account, let's talk about cars. Brahms. After speaking to some Brahms, did you all get to read any of this? Or should I, here, for everybody? After speaking to some Brahms workers and doing observations, working in a similar location, remembered 170 cars through the drive-thru in an 8-hour and 45-minute shift. So this is unusual. I'm operating at using 130 cars in 8 hours. Brahms is open 16 hours and 45 minutes, daily, 363 days a year. So 260 cars daily in drive-thru. I'm not talking about the people who park and walk and go in, just the drive-thru. Let's use 250. That's 90,750 cars yearly that are going to be coming out of that location, going through that neighborhood, and trying to get out there. In the time, I went and did a timed sit at the intersection. Sorry, I need water, but went out and sat at the intersection and timed, because that is I-44 westbound ramp that comes off right there. That is the Classen exit. I sat and did several timed, and I took the average in the middle. In 2 minutes and 24 seconds coming off the I-44 ramp, there were 35 cars in 2 minutes and 24 seconds. That ramp is 1,300 feet long. If you take into account bumper to bumper, 15 feet per car length, if we were parked bumper to bumper, you can get about 80 cars on that ramp to that intersection. So if there's ever an accident there, it will take 5 minutes to back up onto I-44 westbound. That's not even enough time to exchange your information. And the way this is proposed, no matter how this comes about, the city is going to have to pay for a protected left-hand turn off of Classen Circle, and where that drive is, because there are going to be so many accidents the way it's written right there, we're going to have to put yet another light in, because that light where the Classen Circle exit is right at the intersection, and people are going to be trying to dart across. We're going to have to put yet another light at a cost to the city. This is a basin. This is a bad location where water will draw. There's about a 30-foot drop right there. If there is not drainage addressed properly by Brahms, the city, once again, will have to pay, because it will flood. It will be a waterfall driveway right down there. And the city will have to pay approximately, probably, according to other bids I've looked at, $500,000 to $750,000 to redo the drainage there. The streets are not going to be able to take the weight of the equipment. The building, just the building walls and the concrete, it's 718 tons of material. that's going to be toted across those streets and out. It's going to tear up the streets, we're going to have to redo the streets, we're going to have to put in streetlights, we're going to have to do drainage, and we're going to add 90,000 cars a year right there on the drive-through, not even the park and walk-ins. It will cost the city again and again. There will be lawsuits from the flooding, there will be lawsuits from the wrecks, we're going to have to put in lights, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is a bad idea for the city and for city traffic. That's it.
Thank you. No applause, please. Delmar, I can't quite read that. Is it Burge? I'm sorry.
I'm glad to be here. I'm for
Mr. Burge.
Delmar Burge, 5707 Southeast 48th Street.
Thank you.
Okay. My reason for being here is totally historical. And I'm a musician. I'm retired, but from my avocation, which paid for my livelihood, but for real, I'm a musician. I'm from Edwards, Moon, and Douglas High School. I'm a graduate, proud graduate, 1962 Douglas High School. And so I started playing in clubs at the age of 14, real young. And I learned from musicians who came before me who played all over Oklahoma City. And as a result, through the years, I had played at the Hilo Club as a young man. So I went in the Air Force and joined the Air Force to get out of Oklahoma City because I had gone to UCO and New Mexico State and didn't do so good. So my dad told me, now you know what time it is. I'm the oldest of 9, so what time it is in my family means go join the service, because that's what we do. My dad's World War II veteran, so I went to bed that night and got up the next morning, went to the General Record Building and joined the Air Force to get out of Oklahoma City and see the world. I ended up back at Tinker, so my first duty station, still playing music. So as a musician, I still played at the Hilo Club off and on. Now there are 3 people that are left here. We had a party for one in last Saturday on Southeast 15th Street. Her name is Miss Blues, and Miss Blues is celebrating her 81st birthday. She also played at the Hilo Club. There's a gentleman, Joe Sotomayor's guitar player, who played with Garth Brooks and all these guys at Memphis, played at the club also. Joe and I played at the club together, and we still play together. I still play with Miss Blues sometime. But my point is, historically, I go to Charlie's, the record place right now, the record shop right around the corner from the Hilo Club. And Charlie was a good friend of mine. Charlie passed away about 2 or 3 months ago. His grandson runs the club now. But the significance of the Hilo Club to me is that when I got ready to go overseas, I got my orders in 1966 at Tinker, December, just before Christmas. So I knew that was it for me here. I had to go. In the meantime, I took my leave. I'm still playing. I'm playing at the Hilo Club. So just before I left to go, I had to be at Travis Air Force Base in Sacramento, the 24th of March in 1967, 50 years ago. I'm playing at the Hilo Club at that time. The night before I left, I played. I went to the club, and I walked in the club, and they had a party for me. They had cake, they had food, and they had this grandiose party for me, and which was very good because I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to be confronting. But the feeling and the atmosphere in the Hilo Club then was very beautiful. It was like one of the places you could go if you ever watched Cheers. And when everybody comes in, it's a place where everybody knows your name. And this is the way the Hilo Club was in 1967 when I was there. When I left and went overseas and came back, I went to New York City playing music. And I got with some great guys, Sam and Dave, who were from Stax Records, eventually Atlantic Records, Isaac Hayes and those guys. and they did Hold On, I'm Coming, Something's Wrong with My Baby, I'm a Soul Man. And if you've seen the Blues Brothers, you've seen...
Mr. Bruce, we're getting a little far.
Okay, well, then this is historic, though. Now, here's the thing. When I went and looked at TV and saw on the news that you're going to close down the Hollow Club and put something else here in that place, I couldn't imagine that. So I called on the phone. I called to the Hollow Club, and I spoke with a lady named Jolie. I thought it was Jolly, but she said, no, Jolie, I'm from New Orleans. Call her JoJo. So I told her my story, that the last place I played in Oklahoma City was the Hollow Club. The next time I played in Oklahoma City was the Civic Center, which back then was the Municipal Auditorium. And I played with Sam and Dave. I left a regular guy. I came back a star. So she said, well, come down and tell your story. I had seen this on the news, so I said, okay. I came down to the club that evening with my friend. We walked in the club and sat down. And when I sat at the club, I walked in the club and I looked over. She said, you must be Delmar Burge. I said, and you must be Jolie. She said, okay, have a seat over there. And I went over. The manager of the club came and sat next to me. Jolie came over. They came and they were taking pictures of me, of myself and my friend, and they taped me and my story. And it was just like I had never left. And everybody in the club was coming over taking the picture of me. The spirit in that club was like I had never left. And I had not been in that club for 50 years, although I had been by there 1,000 times, back and forth, Penn Square, whatever, and to the Charlies to get CDs. But they told me, she said, well, you have a band? I said, yeah, I have a band.
Mr. Bruce.
And?
I think...
The spirit, I'm saying that the spirit is there.
He is.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's relevant to our deliberation.
Okay, historically, you don't want to tear a place down. Oklahoma City, we get rid of everything. We tear everything down. You can go here, the east side, north side, south side. There's nothing left that was there when I was a kid. I was born and raised on 2nd Street, Deep Deuce. Edwards Edition grew up there. There's nothing left of the east side that was there when I was there. There's no clubs left that I played in that are here now. Then, the Hollow's the only thing left. There's 3 musicians that I know that are left that's Oklahoma City that still love the Hollow Club. We played at the Hollow Club Friday night before last, and those people treated us in that club like we were celebrities. The first song that we played, it was like a standing ovation. Wasn't that the song was so good, but it was the fact that we were there. I had not been there in 50 years, and I had that same feeling. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Alex Pedraza, is it?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Alex Pedraza. I no longer reside in the neighborhood, but I did for the majority of my life at 601 Northwest 45th Street. I'm here today largely, I constructed a brief statement that I think encapsulates several reasons why the application to rezone lots 8 through 13 into a C3 modified use, or the SPUD that's being considered, runs counter to the Oklahoma City's comprehensive development plan. So I'm just going to jump right into it. The Oklahoma City Comprehensive Development Plan divides its land use typology into 2 components, base land use typology areas and layer land use typology areas. Plat Code 2274, Plat 1, lots 8 through 13 fall in an area classified as urban medium intensity base land use typology. The primary goal listed by the plan for development in such areas is to support efficient transit usage and provide pedestrian and bicycle access to retail services, parks, and other destinations. While it is true that one listed priority is infill development on vacant lots, such as lots 10 through 13, it is also true that the other 2 priorities are rehabilitation of underutilized property and development that supports revitalization. Rezoning lots 8 through 13, or 1207 Northwest 50th, would not only be counterproductive to the city's comprehensive plan goal of revitalization for urban medium intensity areas, but it would also likely impede efficient transit in an area that is already notoriously known for being inefficient as it is. The addition of a high intensity commercial operation, or the particular C3 modified SPUD, on Plat 917 would congest the area with many patrons exiting via car from Classen Avenue and Northwest Expressway, immediately converging with patrons trying to enter the premises from the 2 points of entry you can see on the map, as other exits into attempt to enter Interstate 44 off Classen Avenue's eastbound entrance. In regard to the second land use typology component, layer land use typology areas, Plat Code 2284, Plat 1, lots 8 through 13, and Block 5, Lot 6, Plat Code 917 as a whole are located in an area classified as transit-oriented. Unfortunately, I can't get up here today and reference a traffic study like I would like to be able to. That would require thousands of dollars and more time than is currently allocated. Equally unfortunate is the fact that parties interested in rezoning and purchasing the remainder of Plat 917 are not required to have their own traffic impact assessment done prior to filing for rezoning from residential to commercial. And they know that. But for anyone who has ever driven around Plat 917, common sense tells us that rezoning a residential area in order to construct a high-intensity commercial operation such as this C3 modified use would only result in more traffic, thus exacerbating what is already a complex, frustrating, and even dangerous situation. The practicalities of the situation revealed that between high school students on lunch break, commuters exiting from Expressway to re-enter eastbound I-44, and those individuals merely passing through 50th Street, Northwest 50th Street, rezoning lots 8 through 13 of Plat 917 in order to allow for a high-intensity commercial or a SPUD would present very real traffic issues when all of these parties converge at once, especially during peak traffic hours. The outcome directly contradicts Oklahoma City's site design goals by imperiling what is currently a comparatively pedestrian-friendly streetscape. It is true that lots 8 through 13 of Plat 917 currently sit empty, and the principles of property law reiterate over and over that there is nothing more frowned upon than waste presented by empty lots. However, it is worthwhile to consider how lots 8 through 13 of Plat 917 became empty. Over the course of years, interested parties using an affiliated LLC quietly gained title to lots 8 and 9 of Plat 917, raised the previous existing residential structures and waited on an inconspicuous period of amount of time before entering into a contract for sale contingent upon the rezoning of lots 8 through 13 of Plat 917. This is a disingenuous tactic that has been used time and time again by parties interested in certain lots, particularly high-intensity commercial developers, to subtly dupe neighborhood residents, concerned citizens, and planning commission itself. And it has worked with alarming results. The precedent set by allowing this policy to be validated without accounting for other factors, including large big-picture development plan, is extremely detrimental to the forward momentum of Oklahoma City. The precedent is dangerous in that it allows large commercial developers who are not even required to do traffic assessments as part of their due diligence to replace complicated situations like that of Plat 917 with even worse solutions based all in the name of avoiding economic waste of property. This conclusion is further affirmed when contextualized in Oklahoma City's comprehensive plan map, which expressly lists Plat 917 as falling in the revitalize as opposed to revision category of all retail priority areas. Just a little point on that. The Northwest 50th Street corridor falls squarely along the revitalized area. There are 3 different points, 3 different categories. That would be reaffirm, revitalize, and revision. And I believe that rezoning to C3 modified use would constitute a revision, not a revitalization. Lastly, I want to consider the notion that rezoning lots 8 through 13 of Plat 917 in order to develop this C3 modified use commercial operation would alter the fundamental character of the surrounding neighborhood. Lots 8 through 13, residents would be exposed to even more complete view of Interstate 44 and Northwest Expressway. Additionally, as mentioned previously, impairing the transit-oriented nature that is articulated by the typology expressed by Oklahoma City's comprehensive plan would reduce walkability and the general free-flow orientation of the neighborhood that is expressly valued by Oklahoma City's own comprehensive plan, potentially subjecting residents and patrons to hazardous, even dangerous situations. Also, I just want to make a small aside to Mr. Box's point about the remainder of C4 and how that could potentially be developed in the future. As you heard from the current property owner's attorney and representation, there are no plans. There's only plans to raise it. There's no indication that it would become something like a super high intensity use like the hotel that is around the corner or something like that. So that's just mere speculation, and I don't think is really relevant for that consideration today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Catherine Johnson.
Catherine Johnson, 2246 Northwest 35th Street, Oklahoma City. I wanted to address a couple, 4 points. The percentage of the 90,000 additional cars that were mentioned going through the drive-through of the proposed Brahms, a good percentage of those are going to be teenage first and second year drivers from the nearby McGinnis High School. So I think that's something to be considered. There were, the week that this was announced on media, there were 14,000 people that signed a petition in protest of this construction. The mention of trash blowing in a resident's yard, if you want to see trash, you need to go to the Brahms at 39th and Penn and the Brahms at 16th and Classen, because those create a mountain of trash that blows in those neighborhoods continually. In addition to that, at 39th and Penn, you have an issue of transients that congregate around there continually, and that's going to be within a block of a high school. Lastly, I'm an artist and entertainer and have supported a number of the businesses that are currently established there. And two of the businesses, the Grease Trap and the Classen Grill, have for years supported emerging artist shows within their organizations. And so it's a part of the community that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, and it's something that's very much needed. And in addition to that, all of the businesses, the Drunken Fry, the Grease Trap, and the High-Low Club, all are entertainment venues. And in addition to the music venue, they also support live comedy and storytelling. So it's a really wonderful community niche that I hope will be preserved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Robin Arn. Would you give us your name and address for the record?
Robin Arn, 2715 Northwest 33rd Street. I'll make this brief since most of my other talking points were already covered very eloquently by others before me. This is on a positive note about retaining the character of the neighborhoods. We have plenty of areas in the city now that are utilizing the older buildings that have been saved. There's Film Row, 23rd Street, Western is thriving now, and a lot of money has been put into that to make it a walkable, friendly commercial venue. And if a potential buyer who, it was said there was someone that was interested in buying the Donnet building, so if someone could step in and buy it and use it, that could just help retain the character that we're trying to keep to make Oklahoma City unique. Thank you.
Thank you. The last slip I have is for Jane Alsop. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jane Alsop. I live at 1429 Northwest 34th Street here in Oklahoma City. Ms. Chairwoman, you said during an earlier application that we should use the lots as its intended purpose, and I ask for your forgiveness when I say this to you. But my intention for this is if we were to rezone residential areas and you were to vote yes for this application, would that make you a hypocrite? You said that we're supposed to use these for our intended purposes. There are 6 residential lots there. Businesses have bought them out one by one and secretly tearing them down and claiming it's just a lot of dirt, like they did last week at the community meeting. That is unfair to what the revitalization is supposed to be going towards. Revitalization would mean building those houses back and having people in that area that want to live there. Rezoning this into a commercial property, which is contingent for the Donne building to be bought out afterwards, is a very, very misstep, big misstep. And Commissioner Hensley, I'd like to point out that during another earlier application, you said that traffic is an issue. We've pointed out many issues where traffic is a big deal here. The resident who opposed this last week at the community meeting started talking about the children that live in her rent houses. Well, Brahms is open for over 16 hours a day with all that increased traffic with very little roads in and out. How are you going to protect the children that live in those areas? How are you going to protect the children walking up and down 50th Street to McGinnis or Horseman or back and forth to their house? How do you guys propose that? Last week at the community meeting, when asked about the traffic studies, Mr. Box pointed out that as of January 1st of this year, they no longer had to do studies before a request to be rezoned. How is that fair? They also said they've been looking at this property for at least 5 years. You would think in that time that they would have done some sort of study to see the increased amount of traffic and done studies at their other locations to see what would be the difference. It's not just the community that's at stake here. It's the precedent that you guys set. What would be appropriate? Would you still have businesses secretly buying out houses and tearing them down and claiming that it's just a plot of dirt and then wanting to rezone because there's nothing there? There have been many people wanting to buy these lots. I, for one, if I had money and the means to do so, would love to live in that area, love to see that community be vibrant again. And a vote yes to approve this application and push it through to rezone this, and in case make the point for Brahms to go ahead and build, that is a big misstep on your part, and that is not what the revitalization is for. And I'm sorry, commissioners, but it's your duty to protect this community and the uniqueness and the value and the revitalization that you guys want to help with. And putting this through as a yes vote, it would make me disrespect you even more. I'm sorry, but that is the way I see it. And you guys, if you vote yes on this, would not get my respect anymore. Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Mr. Box, did you have something you wanted to add?
Briefly, it was referenced that this is a residential area. I would submit that it's not a residential area. 50th and Classen, at the point where Northwest Expressway intervenes, is a commercial area. It's not a residential area now. There is R1 zoning. Perhaps there was residential homes in the past, but this is a heavy commercial area. There's a hotel that was built north and east of this. It is Zone C4, so to say that it's residential is just simply not accurate. There would never be a scenario in which we could come in now and rezone residential next to C4. It would be incompatible. So what we have now are incompatible residential lots next to high-intensity C4 zoning. A lot of discussion about traffic. The policy that was just referenced is a policy that this commission was involved in. Instead of doing traffic studies now, developers and of all type, residential, industrial, commercial, have to pay impact fees. And so those impact fees go into a pool in which the city can identify traffic solutions that are needed, and then they didn't have money from developers, rather than each developer having to identify solutions and pay for it themselves. So overall, we believe that's going to be a positive impact, and that's why it was passed. A lot of the traffic, this isn't, the traffic that's going to be generated is traffic that is already on these roadways. Okay? These are traffic, these are cars that are already on the roadways. But rest assured, no matter what is developed here, it's going to generate traffic because it's going to be developed under either C4 or it's going to be a Brahms. There is no low-traffic solution that's going to come to this site. Whatever it is redeveloped, it's going to generate traffic. Now, there's a lot of talk about walkability. When you look at the aerial, there's not a sidewalk around. Now, our application requires sidewalks to be built, so we will be a site that will hopefully encourage walkability, but there's not a sidewalk to be found except for the new bank all the way at 50th and Western. But when you look at this neighborhood, there are no sidewalks. Our application will provide sidewalks, so we're going to be promoting and encouraging walkability. And finally, at the end of the day, I hate to go back to what I said at the beginning, but I do believe it is as simple as is a modified C3 SPUD with only 10 or 11 uses appropriate next to a C4 zoned property. In the end, the question is, do we want a Brahms or do we want redevelopment under C4? I submit that for the city, for this area, it is better to be developed as a Brahms. There are 3 TEs, all of which we agree with. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Commissioners, do you have questions for Mr. Box?
I had just one, and I'm recognizing that the C4 property is not included in this SPUD, but with regard to the westbound Northwest Expressway and southbound Classen.
Yes.
The light there is like midway down between the, I believe, about halfway through the Don A building, if you will.
So
between there and the Classen.
So here's a stop bar right here for the light.
Right.
So if you're leaving our site, you would exit on Military, and you'd come and take a left on Classen Circle, and the stop bar for the controlled access to get on Northwest Highway is right here.
Right there. And so
that's an
you
existing
exit
signal.
there. I've been at that light, so I'm
Right.
I'm
Can
well
you turn that in
prepared
this direction too, so we can, I want to.
Now,
so here's Military. You would exit the site here, take a left, and then a left on Classen Circle. The stop bar for the signalized exchange right here is right here. So you'd stop here, and then you could get back westbound on Northwest Highway at a controlled.
Wait one moment. You said you were in agreement with all 3 TEs. One of them is that access shall be from one drive on 50th and shared with the property to the west, and no access shall be permitted to Military. Is what you're saying consistent with this TE?
It is.
Then I'm not following it.
If you look at what
access is from one drive on Northwest 50th down there.
we're only zoning this, so there's no access permitted from this SPUD to
On this
Military.
specific location, and you won't, oh, got it.
let me, David, my question was, though, where's your exit out onto Classen?
It's right here.
Is it ahead of that light? You can make the light or you can't?
You'd go right.
You go right.
You can only go right there.
So that's going to be an only right? It is an only right because that's one way.
Right. Right here, it is one way until you get past there. Then it's two-way.
Two-way.
So you'd have to exit right.
Okay. All right. And you can't turn left there after you exit right.
No, you'd either have to, you keep traveling this way.
Please.
Okay. I think I understand. Yeah.
Okay, we're still in the traffic, one moment. So even though the current owner has not agreed to let this be, the whole site plan be in here, comment in the staff report is conceptual site plan shows access to a signalized intersection on Classen, which is not set up to accommodate traffic from that site. This driveway need to be deleted or the intersection redesigned. Has it been deleted, or is it going to be redesigned? I know it's not part of today's application, but that is the current owner's problem is why we're only...
At permit stage, staff is going to enforce that. Even though it's not part of the zoning application, staff has, at the permit stage, the authority to require us to make traffic improvements. And so we believe there is a solution that can be reached.
If only we knew what it was.
Sorry?
Okay, this is in my ward, so I'll lead off. The problem for me with this application is that it's a little bit of a having your cake and eating it too. I fully understand, having done this kind of work myself in the past, that there are a number of very specific and serious difficulties with finding yourself in a situation where you want to develop property you don't own. I get that the owner of the property doesn't want to give up his C4 zoning. But I also get that Brahms purports to be fully committed to the development of the site. Not committed enough to buy it outright, though. And so while they have a plan to show us, it's conceptual only, and we can't really talk about the details because that's not really in front of us. And what we've really got here is 6 lots, only 2 of which Brahms owns, the other 4 of which are owned by the owner of the surrounding property. He's willing to submit those to the SPUD, but not the rest of it. And that's just not a way to come up with a plan for the development of this property that makes any kind of sense. It's an incredibly difficult and challenging site. I spent an hour the other night driving around and around this site, and from it off and on to Classen, and off and on to Military, and off and on to 50th, and it's like you can't get here from here. There's no view of the site on Classen Boulevard coming north until you're already past the point where you would have to converge onto the frontage road. So you would come all the way up to the right and turn right. The configuration of the traffic signals and the partial one-way, partial two-way access along the frontage roads, it's a nightmare. I'll tell you frankly that when I first heard about this application, my own personal response was, oh no, what a shame, they're going to tear down the patio. My own personal response was, what in the world are they thinking? This is just, it seems like the worst possible place to put a site where you're hoping to attract a lot of traffic. And Brahms is nothing if it's not that. There's no way in and out of the site that makes any kind of sense. There's been a lot of talk about the fact that 50th Street is not a residential street. There actually are 8, or depending on how you count them, 9 residential uses on 50th Street between Classen and Western. They're not residentially zoned, but they're residentially used, and I get that distinction as well. And it's a distinction that exists all over my ward. I simply cannot sort of go both ways on this. I'm guessing that if they've really been looking at the site for 5 years, Brahms probably has a traffic plan for the area. I'm guessing that it's not only going to have to be reconfigured and re-engineered, but that at some point there's going to have to be a major redesign of this intersection. But we can't talk about that because that's not what's in front of us. And without that kind of input, there's no way to really design something for this site that makes sense. I simply cannot support this application without that opportunity. If we're not going to go all in, if we're not going to make something here that makes sense, I'm not going to be able to support it.
I'll go next. My issue is, we've got a SPUD, but we're only meant to consider a certain portion of a site, but we're given a site plan that includes much more. And I know everybody's been struggling with that. And in the end, I tend to lean on the comprehensive plan. And how am I to review the project in front of us with its, in regards to the comp plan, without being able to consider the entirety of the site? I disagree that what you're doing provides for additional walkability. I think it's a downgrade in the quality of the built environment, and I think it's a significant decrease in density, both of which I think are contrary to the intentions of the City of Oklahoma City and the purpose of the comprehensive plan. So I also cannot support your item.
So here's my take on this. There's two applications that stand out to me. One of them is the one that we heard just previous to this, which was a use in an area that was not compatible. It's not supported by the infrastructure. It's not supported by the comprehensive plan. I can talk about my view of the comprehensive plan versus the one Commissioner Hyacinth kind of gave in a second, but there was nothing about that use that made any sense for that area at all. Here, that is not the case. The infrastructure here is heavily designed to support this type of development. It's been a commercial area along the frontage of Classen. There are numerous commercial businesses, restaurants, large office developments, et cetera, that affront Classen and Northwest Highway. This area has been encroached, and that's something that I certainly recognize and am sympathetic to. But trying to be objective, you go to this and you say, if we didn't have this, if we didn't have this information, if I didn't have this site plan in front of me, and they came in here and they wanted to zone that property in an SPUD with C3 as a base, and we didn't know anything else other than that, it would be very hard for me not to support the application, because the area supports it, the surrounding businesses and zoning are primarily commercial, and even though the infrastructure is not well designed, it is designed to carry this traffic, which is why it exists. That's why Jimmy Zegg built there in that area. It's why there's an office building there. It's why, I mean, that's the point. And so if they were to come in here and those buildings didn't exist, and you just look at the base zoning of this district in this corner, I would support the application. And I understand that there are sort of personal facts and factors and emotions that that give rise to a clouding of that issue. I feel that to some extent too. I love Classen Grill for that matter. But I can't get beyond the fact that I feel like everybody is getting sidestepped by what's on this image in front of them rather than what the comp plan calls for and the zoning would allow for and how it would be viewed if it were a blank slate. And so for those reasons, I have to support the application. I can't make it emotional. I can't make it political. What I'm telling City Council by making that recommendation with my vote is, do I think it's supported by the comp plan? Do I think the zoning around it is compatible? And the answer to those two questions are yes for me.
Well, the one thing that I would say about that is, you know, my ward differs from yours in the fact that there's an awful lot of, and most of it is just sort of historical anomaly, but there is an awful lot of highly intensive zoning that frankly is kind of, it really is historical anomaly. It's left over from before we had a zoning code, and when we adopted one, if you owned a store, that became C. And as the zoning code was finessed over the years, and there were 10 different categories of C, if you were that original store, you got C4. You got the highest possible. And it was based on vested rights and that kind of thing. But those were not parcels of land that you would then look at over time and say, oh yeah, that's an appropriate, most intense commercial use ever site. So there are a number of sites like that all over Ward 2, and there are some of them right up next to residential uses. The only thing that keeps them from being disastrous in a lot of situations is that they're so small. And the kind of uses that would most often make use of that kind of high intense zoning need more space than that. So in some ways, the only line of defense for those residential properties that butt right up against those commercial uses that, again, going back, started off back in the 30s or whatever as little corner drugstores, and that's a lot different than what you can do under C4 today. The only real protection for those residential uses, and in this case, we're talking about, Helm Farm neighborhood, is that they're small, they're limited, and when people want to make a modern day use that's that intense, they have to come and get permission. They have to ask for more than what they have. If they want to develop some kind of C4 use on what they've got that right. We don't have to help them do it. The question of whether you would look at this site, you know, in and of itself, by itself, this little postage stamp, these 6 lots, and say, is it appropriate to rezone these from R1 to C3? That's not a theoretical question for me. I've told people no. I've had people approach me about rezoning those lots.
Can we see the diagram that's got the zoning on it real quick?
And I have to say also, there are places now that we are really urbanizing our zoning approach in a lot of ways. There are all kinds of places. The first woman who spoke and said that the Donnay building was one of the first examples of mixed-use architecture from the city. I have to kind of smile. You know, every commercial corner in Ward 2 was storefronts on the bottom and apartments up above at one point. So, I mean, everything old is new again. It's not like that is something that we've never heard of before. But it is important that you integrate those uses into neighborhoods in a way that makes sense. And here, what we're really doing, and I think because of the horrendous traffic flow pattern that really doesn't exist here, I mean, it's horrendous, it's not flow, is we're going to be pushing that traffic down Military and into Helm Farm. There's no question about that. And I absolutely cannot support that. We have held the line up and down Western, up and down 36th, against allowing commercial encroachment into these neighborhoods, against allowing demolition of residential properties, sometimes achieved through neglect. They don't think they can get approval to rezone it with a house standing there. They'll let the house, you know, dilapidate, tear it down, and then it's just dirt.
Yeah, and I get that, and I understand what you're saying. And if you, to be fair, I'll make the argument for you in that if this lot that is C4 is on the south side of 50th, which serves as essentially an O2 buffer between the intensive uses in the neighborhood to the south of it, and you want to bring a C-based classification over there, I would totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. But as it stands today, I don't know what the square footage is, and I'm not prepared to, but what could happen on that C4 at some point in the future by right is significantly more threatening to the neighborhood to the south than what you're proposing if you lock up. And I am bothered very much by the fact that this site plan is a piece of paper with some ink on it that could change, but it can't change very much. They can't move their layout around. I mean, it's, if this isn't here, something will be there. And it could be even more intensive.
I don't know whether that's true or not. That hasn't developed.
I understand.
And I would suggest to you that, in part, it's because the traffic flow and the engineering that's going to be required to make it flow is so bad. I mean, I'm not sure that there's a use that's, you know, so much more intense that would be appropriate or allowed under C4 will develop there. It hasn't, you know. And if you drive down that frontage road and see how narrow it is and how the nose-in parking along those businesses sticks halfway out into the street, even 50th Street is a very narrow street. So that hasn't occurred. I'm not saying, and forgive me, but I'm not saying that it's not appropriate to redevelop the site. I'm just saying if we're going to redevelop the site, let's do it. The site, not chip away at it
but we
by
may not have
rezoning.
that luxury. We may not have that luxury. And And again, it just gets back to the appropriateness of that site for the use that's being contemplated. And I just can't get away from.
Frankly, you may not have that luxury under the SPUD that they're asking for here. This thing includes alcohol, beverage retail sales, convenience sales and personal services, eating establishments, alcohol permitted, we've eliminated gasoline sales, retail sales and services general. What they come forward to us with is, as I started off by saying, having your cake and eating it too. They're just asking for these 6 little lots. The rest of it is what it is. Well, we can't help what it is. It is what it is. But we don't have to help them down that path without the ability to actually design the site in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. The only other comment I'll make, and then I'm going to be quiet, is that it's to your comment about the owner and about bringing it under an SPUD. I don't know very many people who would be willing to, on the hope that something might be rezoned, give up the base zoning district of C4 classification because of what is allowable on that type of site with that zoning. And so it's really not, I don't think it's fair or appropriate to say, oh, well, the owner should just go ahead and allow it to be rezoned. He is degrading the value of the property that he owns and purchased by doing that.
I think what would have to happen here, and, feel free to call me crazy, Brahms would have to buy the property. Then they'd be coming to us and saying, look, we've got this piece of property, most of it's C4, this little part of over here is residential. This is what we want to do with it. Let's figure out a way to make that happen. And then at least what would be in front of us would be the redevelopment of the site in a way that makes sense, in a way that would allow us to actually come up with a design for the property that would address some of these issues that are just huge, huge barriers as far as I'm concerned.
If I may, you two aren't going to agree. All right? It's just not going to happen. So we need to move on. All right? And frankly, one of the things that strikes me about this application is it's a challenging spot. I don't disagree. I think there's pros and cons for both of it. I will say this, that I'm struck by the fact that while several folks have come here today to speak to us on this application, none of the people on 50th Street have come to speak to us on this application. None of the people that I've not seen anybody from the high-low that said, I own the high-low, I want to keep my place. I've not seen any of the people who live in the residences. Okay, and I'm assuming you're not in favor of it. Okay. Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So there are some folks here that obviously are not here. So, look, I think this is a challenging piece of property. We have an application in front of us. Frankly, C3 is I'm inclined to agree with Scott that it is a less intensive zoning than what we have existing down on that corner. It's a step down, if you will. And I don't like using that term in terms of commercial zoning, but frankly, if I look at the property and go C4, C3, O2, or R1, it's like that's a progression of zoning that we typically would favor. Now, there are some traffic concerns. The traffic concerns are there whether Brahms is there or whether the high-low's there or the Donnay building. That whole area between that area and Pennsylvania Avenue along there requires effort and and some additional work. But I think I'm in support of this application for this piece of property, hoping to an extent that we get what Brahms has said that they're going to do, just because I think that this is a progression of, it's right for this piece of property. So I think, I don't want to short circuit the conversation or the debate on the horseshoe, but I don't think the positions are going to change if there's additional questions. I think we need to consider moving it ahead or vote on it one way or the other. Rusty, if you got something to say.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, two things, and it's on the issues we've talked about. I've mentioned, of course, earlier, not being willing to include the whole property, the owner not being willing to accommodate, and to Commissioner Craven's comment that the owner, you can't imagine them dropping it, giving up their C4. Well, they will if they want to accommodate an important piece of property, and they're not. And with respect to the point of Brahms needs to go ahead and buy it, or with the smart folks representing them, have a contract that protects them, get them as far as they need to get to where the owner will accommodate that. You're making it really hard on the applicant, and the current owner who's trying to sell it are making it really hard by complicating it by going halfway. So that's what you guys are saying, but where I'm leaning is I think the current owner needed to accommodate it, and they can hopefully find a way to do that. Second thing is, and if they do, I don't mean to say you're going to walk back up the next meeting and say they've done that. The other issue with the comprehensive plan, whether it's the applicant or Commissioner Cravens that wants to address it, what I'm seeing in the in the staff report about the comprehensive plan, it's things that say it should be a development that has greater intensity and mixture of uses. The intent of the topology is to create unique mixed-use districts with housing and employment opportunities. So that will still be on the table in my mind. If I just don't want to mislead you, if you come back, okay, we've included it all. I do think that is still an issue. I think the comprehensive plan is still difficult to determine what should be done, even if they come back and accommodate that.
Fair enough. Now, keep in mind the comp plan is a general guideline. It is not regulation. It is not passed by ordinance. It is not law. So I understand the concerns, but the idea that the owner would come in, the idea that Brahms would buy the whole site, I don't know that I've ever represented a client that has already bought the site before they come here. 99.9% of every client I represent has some sort of contingency contract. It's the only way a smart developer can work, because if they don't get what they want through the zoning, they don't have an interest in the site. The odd thing here is you won't get to see it again. So kind of what I said at the beginning, it's either going to be a Brahms or it's going to be developed as C4. And none of those comp plan provisions will come into play because he can go develop as is right now without having to come back for anything before the Planning Commission.
I guess the reason I zone in on the comp plan was passed 2 years ago, and I think the zoning code for Oklahoma City was probably passed before I was born. And so, although it's a set of guidelines and it's not yet ordinance or regulation, we are still allowed to consider that. We're required to consider that as when we review these, and it just doesn't even come close. It doesn't even sniff the guidelines of the comp plan, and in my opinion, for that area.
Yeah,
so,
fair enough. Like I said, I just wanted to comment to his point. The comp plan will never come into play if Brahms doesn't build, because he can develop the site as is with no oversight whatsoever.
You say he can, but Carolyn Powers in her ward has said it hasn't previously, and to tell us it will, that's not the application today. They say that they're going to build something else. I mean, right now they want something that's not C4 there. But to say they will, or to say they will tear it down, I can't get into those hypotheticals of what will happen in the future. I don't know if anybody else can.
No, fair enough. And that's why I brought it back to, is a modified C3 next to C4 appropriate? And I certainly think it absolutely is.
Real quickly then to ask again, the comprehensive plan does have this mixture of uses and unique mixed-use districts with housing. Am I missing something? Maybe the staff report isn't complete. Is there something else from the study that said this would be inconsistent, that that's not true?
But so the whole mixed-use problem, though, is you're trying to apply a specific provision in the comp plan to maybe this site, instead of, it's meant as a broad, general policy, okay? Not every site can function that way. One of the problems with this site is you're going to struggle to have a mix of uses, surely because of what the parking requirement is going to be, no matter what you build there. So to imagine you're going to have a mix of uses, it's hard to see because of the shape and because of the size. So the comp plan is a general comp plan. If you look at the area, it's urban medium, that covers a tremendous amount of the city. So to say that every single site within that entire brown area, which is what it is in your book, has to meet every one of those guidelines is just simply not true. You can find 15 provisions that we meet and several that we don't, and that's how every single zoning case that comes before you is.
From your own ward, can you make the motion?
I'll move approval.
Second?
Madam Chairwoman, because of the nature of this case, we would ask that we move on without a recommendation. I mean, I think everybody is stuck in the positions they've got. The uncertainty of continuing it and subjecting this commission to another 2 hours of discussion, I would suggest that we move it on with no recommendation.
I'll make that motion.
Well, yeah.
No. You need 5 votes in order to take action, one way or the other. That did not get 5
That's my point.
votes.
Instead of having a stalemate, everybody seems to be entrenched in their position.
I understand what you're asking, and I will entertain some discussion on that topic. I frankly am not in favor of us moving cases forward without a recommendation.
Well, we've got 4-4. We don't have another commissioner. And frankly, 3-4. I'm sorry. There was only 7 people here. So I don't know how things change. I've made the motion. It doesn't have to get approved, but I'll move it. I say we move it ahead.
Well, I'll take a counter motion.
There's a motion on the floor. I think Robert rules, it has to have the opportunity to have a second before we just have counter motions, I believe. I mean, it could die for a lack of a second, but when there's a motion on the floor, there has to be an opportunity for a second.
What motion is it that you think is on the floor?
He made a motion to move it to council without a recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
A motion and a second to move the case forward to City Council without any recommendation. Would you cast your votes, please?
Can I ask a question before?
Sure.
I'm, of course, never done this before. And the motion is made because of a stalemate?
Pretty much.
My request.
It's his request.
My
and
request.
frankly, I agree with his request.
If we come back in 2 weeks, there will be the exact same presentation you just heard. There are 4 people that have voted to approve my application, 3 people that have voted against it.
Please.
I thought it was 4-3.
It is what it is.
So there is no Ward 4 commissioner
At the moment.
at the moment, and I didn't see it wasn't on the docket this week at council. Perhaps Lee comes back. So do we want to go through several more hours in the hope that...
I'm just trying to understand.
Sure.
That's what it means. That's what it means.
So to some degree, we're passing the buck, right? I mean,
Which is it's not unprecedented. We've done this before.
Not passing the buck because we refuse to vote, passing the buck because we're at a stalemate, and we will probably be at another stalemate. If we want to try again, we could. But we did address it, and everybody voted. Nobody abstained. So.
There's a motion and a second.
No, there's no discussion. No, there's no
We don't
further
want to
discussion
entertain
on that from the floor, I'm sorry.
Well, he's the attorney for Brahms. We have representatives.
Sir, no further discussion
My only
from
comment
the
is
floor.
that you have 4 votes that are no, and that yes, it can become a 5th no vote. It cannot become a 5th yes vote. That's my only point.
You got a motion. Let's vote on the motion. We have a motion and a second. We need to vote on the motion.
We have a
Please.
motion and a second to move this matter forward to City Council without any recommendation.
Correct.
Cast your votes, please. Four to 3. So it's automatically continued. Is that what I understand? The matter's automatically continued. We'll take a moment and let the chambers clear.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you bearing with everyone this evening.
Would you step outside, please? We still have business to conduct.
Okay, the final item is item 22, an ordinance on public hearing and recommendation amending Chapter 59 of the Municipal Code pertaining to non-conforming residential driveways. This is the one that was introduced 2 meetings ago, that when we talked about the existing non-conforming driveways, homes that for some reason have never had a driveway or don't have a driveway. This allows the width to go from 12 feet to 22 feet to allow side-by-side parking rather than tandem, where people have been getting numerous tickets for yard parking.
I just mentioned that we had a case recently before the Board of Adjustment that dealt with this issue, and it was pretty silly, frankly. So this is a great ordinance. I'll move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve item number 22. Would you cast your votes, please?
That's you, Gary.
It is approved.
All right. Gary didn't vote. No, Gary didn't. Gary didn't.
Where's mine?
Yeah.
We have additional items. Planning Commission committees. We don't have any committees standing, I don't think. Planning Commission members. Comments? Planning Commission members?
Yes. I do have a comment. I'm sorry. Recently, of much interest was the discussion of the parking garage overlooking Civic Center Park. And there was some discussion around that regarding this is appropriate, this isn't appropriate, this is too tall, it's too short, et cetera. So I think, or I would like to see, I'd like to see some sort of study by the planning department. Lance, maybe you could do that remotely from Stillwater, that would kind of give us some context and color with respect to development that's going to come around there, because frankly, I had my own view that I won't share because it's not one, but there was, I know there was hotly contested about this general area, and about appropriateness, et cetera, about what we're trying to achieve down here in this area, down here, especially around Civic Center Park. We spent a lot of money on that park, frankly, and this area at City Hall and Civic Center, along with the new buildings across the street, are really improving that. And my personal view was I would have hated to see a parking garage come up right there on that particular corner as we kind of work to develop. So I don't know what the study would look like, but I'd like some more information for my own, to give some context to some of these conversations later on.
Be a little more articulate about what it is you would like to see.
Well, I don't know exactly.
No, I mean, just describe what it is you want information about.
Well, I want information about appropriateness potentially, or what we think with respect to the plan for that particular structure, that particular use, how high buildings ought to be, and I know we don't legislate.
Around Center Park?
Specifically around Civic Center Park, but maybe the area should be broadened. I'm not good at defining what the area of study ought to be, but that specific point kind of raised my eyebrows about, well, golly, what is appropriate for development down in that part of in this part of downtown?
You run with that, Sarah.
Sarah's got it. She'll figure out. And we can talk about it, Sarah. But
I wanted to make a comment today. Today is the last Planning Commission at which we will have Lance Gross with us, I'm sorry to say. And I have a few comments that I would like to make about Lance. He has been just really a tireless partner in seeking and crafting outcomes that are not only solve problems, but facilitate creative development. And I'm truly sorry to see him go. That regret is leavened only by the enormous good luck I wish him in this new endeavor. I have no doubt whatsoever that he'll be a tremendous success, and Stillwater's lucky to have him, and their gain is our loss. Not a week goes by that I do not get compliments about Lance from applicants, protestants, developers, mom and pops, and I know he has always worked really hard to answer any question that I ask him that he doesn't already know off the top of his head. He always gets back to me quickly and thoroughly, and he's always been helpful and polite and cheerful, and I'm ashamed to say it never occurred to me that to think, what would we ever do without him? But I'm sure that he's going to be a tremendous success in his new adventure, and I wish him all the best luck.
Much too kind.
No, it's not.
one thing on my question, uses is kind of part of it too. Duh, that's kind of fundamental to what we do. So I'm sorry. Uses, you got that too, sir? Figure that part out. Thank you.
But I will definitely miss each and every one of you. I mean, it's such an amazing group to work with, staff and also Planning Commission. I couldn't have it any better. I mean, you guys are really incredible. I will definitely miss you. Pretty much the same thing, but just yes. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Definitely. Yes. Well, I appreciate everything. That's very nice, very kind. Exactly. Yeah, that's the way I look at it.
Move to adjourn.